Humble girl pays a stranger's bus fare on a rainy morning, unaware he's a powerful CEO in disguise. What he did next left everyone completely speechless. But before we dive into the full story, let me know where you're watching from and what time it is. Now subscribe to the channel and let's get started. A thin beam of morning light filtered through the dusty windows of the crowded city bus. Lily, a young nurse intern with tired eyes but a kind heart, stood near the back door, carefully balancing her worn purse and a small tote containing her medical textbooks. She was used to this hustle, waking up before dawn, reviewing notes for her certification exam, and taking the first bus across town to reach the hospital where she was completing her internship. Despite her exhaustion, Lily never failed to notice the small details around her. The elderly woman who coughed into her handkerchief, the single mother juggling a toddler and groceries, the teenage boy nodding off from lack of sleep. In her 19 years, Lily had learned to read the silent struggles of others. Maybe that was why she had chosen nursing, to care for those in need, no matter how large or small the problem seemed. Today, however, something was off in the air. The bus rattled along its usual route, engine sputtering like it might give out at any moment. People were crammed shoulder to shoulder, the smell of hot brakes and city smog mixing with the faint perfume of cologne or the tang of cheap coffee. Lily clutched her small coin purse tightly, calculating if she had enough for both her bus fare and a simple lunch later. Next to her, an older man rummaged in his pockets, searching for exact change. She offered him a gentle smile as he finally found the right coins. Suddenly, at the next stop, a tall figure climbed aboard, head tilted down as though embarrassed. He was dressed in slightly wrinkled office attire, though the jacket seemed more expensive than most. He slid a hand into his trouser pocket, then his other pocket, and froze. The man's gaze fell upon the driver, who was already eyeing him suspiciously. "Fare, please," the bus driver said, the same monotone request he gave every passenger. The man patted his chest pockets, then reached inside a sleek leather briefcase that looked completely out of place on this aging bus. He pulled out nothing but a pen, then gave a strained, apologetic chuckle. I'm sorry, I must have forgotten my wallet. Please, if you just let me ride a few stops, I'll—" He stopped talking as soon as he noticed the irritated stares around him. Passengers tended to have little patience for someone who couldn't pay, especially during rush hour. Some muttered things under their breath, accusing him of trying to get a free ride. The bus driver folded his arms, ready to kick him out. But before words could escalate, Lily stepped forward, heart pounding. She wasn't sure why she felt compelled to help. Maybe it was the desperation in his voice or the subtle tremor in his posture. "I can cover his fare," she offered quietly. She pulled out a few coins without hesitation, ignoring the sighs of protest from those who thought the man should have been more responsible. The driver shrugged, taking Lily's coins, then pushed the bus forward with a jolt. As Lily tried to steady herself, the man turned to her, eyes wide with a complicated mix of gratitude and relief. "Thank you," he said softly, clearing his throat. "I promise I'll pay you back." Lily simply shook her head, her ponytail swinging. "It's only a small fare, really. No need?" Then, mustering a friendly smile, she turned away, slightly flustered. She was used to helping people in the hospital, but outside of that setting, she rarely got involved in strangers' troubles. The bus lurched again, sending Lily stumbling. The man gently steadied her by the elbow, his hand surprisingly warm. "I'm Richard," he said, voice calm despite the commotion around them. "Lily," she answered, tucking a stray hair behind her ear. She tried not to notice how tall he was, or how his voice carried a quiet confidence that felt out of place on a bus route known for carrying laborers, students, and lower-wage workers like herself. "Well, Lily, I owe you," Richard said, adjusting the collar of his shirt. He gazed around at the bus's interior, almost like he was seeing it for the first time. "I appreciate your kindness more than you know." They exchanged only a few more words, mostly small talk about how busy the city was, before the bus reached Lily's stop near the hospital. She gave Richard a shy nod goodbye and hopped off, rushing to clock in for her shift. She didn't notice how Richard watched her from the window, his expression unreadable as the bus pulled away. Inside the hospital's bustling corridors, Lily quickly immersed herself in her duties. Since she was still just an intern, she handled smaller tasks, checking vital signs, updating charts, assisting in the triage area. Although her salary was almost negligible, Lily felt a sense of satisfaction every time she calmed a frightened patient or comforted a worried family member. She aspired to pass her final exam and become a registered nurse, her dream since she was a little girl. The hospital environment was a second home despite the endless wave of tasks and the emotional toll that came with seeing people in pain. During a short break, Lily texted her mother to ask how she was feeling today. Her mother's health had been declining steadily over the past year, with medical bills stacking up higher than they could handle. Lily, determined to pay them off, had taken on every extra shift possible. She rarely bought new clothes or small luxuries for herself. On top of that, her mother insisted that Lily keep some money for her own needs. But Lily always resisted. Nothing was more important than her mother's well-being. As Lily ended her shift late in the afternoon, her phone buzzed with a text from her landlord. The rent was due in 2 days. She bit her lip, heart pounding. With her mother's medication costs, it would be a close call this month. She wondered if she should sell her old phone or skip meals again to make ends meet. Exhaustion weighed on her as she walked toward the hospital exit. Just as Lily reached the glass doors, a well-dressed man stepped aside, holding them open for her. Surprised by the sudden gesture, she looked up and froze in place. There stood Richard, the same man from the bus, but now in a sleek, tailored suit that made him look every bit like a corporate executive. Only hours ago, he had seemed flustered, rummaging for bus fare. Now he radiated confidence, as though he belonged in the halls of a prestigious institution. What are you doing here?" Lily asked, blinking in confusion. He offered a disarming smile. "I'm looking for someone, actually. A kind person who paid my fare this morning." "That was you," Lily managed, still startled. Was this some kind of coincidence? Had he truly come all this way to repay a simple bus fare? Richard nodded, placing a gentle hand in the pocket of his suit trousers. "I told you I'd pay you back." His gaze wandered around the hospital lobby, taking in the decor, the hurried staff, the lines of patients waiting for care. He seemed unaccustomed to the environment and yet oddly comfortable speaking to Lily. "It's not necessary," Lily insisted, feeling a twinge of embarrassment. She didn't want people thinking she was asking for money. "Really, forget it. I'm just glad you got to wherever you needed to go." Richard hesitated, then reached into his jacket, pulling out a sleek wallet. "If you won't let me reimburse you," he said slowly, "maybe there's another way I can show my appreciation." Lily only stared. She couldn't fathom what else he might offer her. Money? She'd never felt right accepting more than she needed. A favor? From a total stranger? Before either of them could say more, a nurse rushed by, calling Lily's name. They were short-staffed in the children's ward, and Lily's help was needed ASAP for an emergency. Apologizing to Richard, Lily hurried back inside. He watched her go, a flicker of genuine concern crossing his face. Without another word, he slipped out of the lobby, leaving Lily to her duties and her confusion. The evening brought Lily back home to a modest apartment on the edge of the city. The living room light was dim, revealing piles of unopened envelopes, bills, medical statements, overdue notices. Her mother lay resting on the couch, too weak to move much these days. Lily checked her mother's temperature, then quietly heated some leftover soup for dinner. Though worry gnawed at her, she maintained a gentle smile, assuring her mother that all was well. At midnight, Lily lay on her thin mattress, replaying the day's events. The odd meeting with Richard felt surreal, especially after discovering his polished, affluent demeanor. Who was he, really? A professional from some big corporate world? Or was he just a man who forgot his wallet and happened to own a very expensive suit? She couldn't explain why she believed there was more to the encounter. Maybe it was the way he looked at her in the hospital corridor, like he was observing everything for the first time, or like he carried secrets he couldn't yet share. Lily shrugged off her unease. People came and went in her life. Her only constant was her mother's condition and the unstoppable tide of medical bills. She decided it was best not to dwell on a stranger's mysterious appearance. Yet, as the night deepened, Lily struggled to sleep. A small part of her hoped, or feared, that Richard would cross her path again. Another part reminded her that she had real problems to solve. Rent, medications, next month's exam fees. Her life offered no space for daydreams about strangers on the bus. She sighed, pressing her face against the worn pillow, seeking solace in the knowledge that she still had a job, a roof over her head, and a mother who needed her. Those were the things that truly mattered. Meanwhile, in a high-rise office far across town, Richard Collins stared through a massive window overlooking the city's lights. His reflection looked back at him, a reflection he hardly recognized. Normally he moved through life insulated by wealth and influence, seldom mixing with everyday people. He had decided to leave his wallet behind on purpose that morning, determined to blend in among the city's regular folk, to experience a single day without his usual entourage or privileged bubble. But what he hadn't expected was the quiet compassion of a stranger named Lily. He couldn't forget how she paid his fare with those last coins she probably needed. And now that he knew she worked at this hospital, knew her kindness came from the very profession dedicated to healing, something stirred in him. He wanted to see her again, to help her in some way, though she seemed fiercely independent. Richard had never felt so motivated by genuine admiration before. In his usual circles, politeness was often pretense, and relationships were built around deals or social clout. Lily's simple gesture showed him a sincerity money could never buy. Stepping away from the window, Richard made a decision. He would find out more about Lily's life, not to intrude, but to see if there was any way he could repay her kindness that went far beyond the price of a bus fare. Little did he know that discovering the true breadth of Lily's struggles would change both of their lives forever. Lily's alarm buzzed at 5 a.m. again, dragging her from a dreamless, shallow sleep. She jolted up, still wearing her clothes from the night before, her pulse accelerating the instant she remembered the bills, the upcoming certification exam, and her mother's medications. She had fallen asleep hunched over her desk, trying to calculate whether her paycheck could possibly stretch enough to cover everything. Her eyes stung from fatigue, but she pulled herself up, grabbed a fresh uniform, and swallowed the apprehension clenching her chest. She prepared a quick breakfast, 2 eggs and a thin slice of bread, then checked on her mother, who was still asleep on the living room couch covered with layers of blankets. Her mother's breathing sounded shallow but steady. Lily bent down and adjusted the pillows, quietly kissing her on the forehead. The familiar knot of anxiety returned to Lily's stomach. The hospital's nurses had advised her that, with her mother's worsening condition, Lily might soon have to consider a more specialized facility or more aggressive treatments. All of that required resources Lily simply didn't have. Despite her constant worries, Lily tried to keep her spirits up. She brushed her hair into a neat ponytail, slipped into her scuffed white sneakers, and hurried out the door to catch her usual bus. As always, she clutched her coin purse tightly, replaying mental reminders. Pay rent by Thursday. Pick up medication refills tomorrow. Study after evening shift. The narrow path of her life left little room for error. The bus ride was uneventful today, no sign of Richard. Lily felt a strange pang of disappointment at that realization. She berated herself for being so silly. After all, Richard was just a stranger who'd momentarily stepped into her life. Surely he had no reason to ride the bus again, especially if he was as affluent as his expensive suit suggested. Besides, Lily had her own problems to solve and no time to daydream. By the time she arrived at the hospital, she was already thinking of how to manage her lunch money. A twinge of guilt formed when she passed by the cafeteria, smelling the comforting aroma of fresh coffee and pastries. She forced herself to keep walking, deciding to save her coins for her mother's dinner. She stepped into the staff locker room, slipped on a clean pair of scrubs, and quickly began her morning rounds. "Morning, Lily," greeted Marie, a senior nurse, as they crossed paths in the corridor. "Dr. Willis is looking for you in Ward B. Something about checking vitals on a new patient." Lily thanked her, hustling off with her stethoscope slung around her neck. Even though she was just an intern, the doctors and nurses had already come to trust her reliability. She was meticulous and gentle, willing to help at a moment's notice. Ward B was located at the far end of the hospital, past the busier emergency section. The hallway smelled faintly of antiseptic and old paint. Lily double-checked each door number until she reached the newest patient's room. She hesitated slightly at the door. There was something about the hush in that corridor that made her uneasy. Inside, she found a young woman recovering from appendicitis. Lily offered a comforting smile, asked how she was feeling, and proceeded to measure her blood pressure and temperature. The patient thanked her in a raspy voice. In moments like this, Lily was reminded exactly why she'd chosen this path. Small acts of compassion could soothe so many fears. At the nurse's station, Lily updated the patient's chart and leaned over to ask another intern about the scarceness of supplies. "Did they restock the surgical kits yet?" she whispered. The other intern shook her head glumly. Budget cuts, overwork, and hospital shortages were topics they discussed almost daily. "Lily, that new family in room 212, they don't speak English well," said a nurse at the station. "Could you help them with paperwork? I know you've got that gentle touch." Lily's mother was from a small rural town, and Lily had grown up hearing not only the local dialect but also learning empathy for people who were often brushed aside. She nodded, collecting a stack of forms and heading toward the family's room. On her way, she glanced out a window and saw the bright sky, wishing she had time to stand in a patch of sunlight for just a few minutes. But her life never slowed down. After assisting the family with their forms and allaying their anxieties as best she could, Lily headed back toward the main lobby. Suddenly, she heard a voice calling her name from behind. Turning, she was startled to see the same tall man from the bus, Richard. He was wearing a simple blue-collared shirt and gray trousers, far from the extravagant suit of yesterday. Yet he still looked undeniably polished, as though even casual wear had been tailored to fit him perfectly. "Hi," Lily said, blinking. "You're back?" His smile was genuine. "I had a meeting at the hospital administration office," he replied, gesturing vaguely down the hall. "I'm happy I ran into you. I was hoping I could talk to you for a minute." His eyes flicked to her ID badge, which read, "Lily Reyes, Intern." She noticed it, self-conscious of how worn the plastic looked. "Sure," Lily managed, trying not to appear flustered. She noticed a few passing nurses whispering and casting curious glances. They rarely saw a visitor so intent on speaking to an intern like her. She quickly led him into a nearby waiting lounge, which was quieter than the main corridor. Sitting down on a plastic chair, she folded her hands in her lap. Richard sat across from her, posture straight, tone hushed. "I never properly thanked you for paying my fare, and I realize I caught you off guard yesterday when I showed up." He paused, as though weighing how much he should say. "The truth is, I came here not just to repay you, but to see how I could return the kindness you showed me." Lily bit her lip. "It was just bus fare," she insisted. "I promise it wasn't a big deal. I help people all the time." He gave a small laugh, though his eyes were gentle. "Right, but this isn't about the money. I was in a situation that morning, trying to learn more about the everyday struggles people face. Well, it's complicated." He stopped, looking slightly embarrassed. "Let's just say I rarely ride the bus or walk the city streets, but I decided to do it because I've been missing something important." Lily tilted her head, not sure how to respond. She wondered if he was some journalist doing an exposé or perhaps a visiting philanthropist. But even that didn't quite fit. Missing something? He nodded, but then abruptly changed course. "Tell me, how is your day going? How's your schedule? You look exhausted." She blinked, surprised by his concern. Nobody outside her immediate circle ever asked how she felt. The question alone seemed to pierce her composure. "I'm all right," she answered too quickly. "Work is busy, that's all. Hospitals never sleep." Richard seemed to study her, as if noticing the dark shadows under her eyes, the slump in her shoulders. "Yes, I can imagine. You do a lot for others." He paused. "Could we meet for a coffee, or even just a short break, sometime after your shift? I'm not trying to pry, but I'd like to hear more about what you do, and maybe there's some way—" She stood up abruptly, remembering her tasks. "I'm sorry. I have to return to the ward right now. There's a child who needs a follow-up. Maybe some other time?" Richard rose too, not wanting to push. "Of course, I understand. May I give you my phone number? If you ever—" He stopped, noticing Lily's uncertain expression. She hesitated, conflicted. She didn't want to be rude, but she also felt uneasy accepting any more help, especially if it involved personal contact. Her phone's screen was cracked, and she had limited calling minutes. Sighing inwardly, she realized that refusing would appear ungrateful. "All right," she whispered. He pulled a small card from his pocket. It was unmarked except for a handwritten number. "Call me if you need anything," he said, handing it to her. "Or even if you just want to talk." Lily took it, noticing how the card was made of premium cardstock, the edges embossed. She felt out of place, but she managed a quick nod before hurrying back toward Ward B. As she walked away, the same question rang in her mind. Who is Richard really? That afternoon, between tasks, Lily peeked at the phone number. She had stuffed the card into her pocket without even glancing at the details. To her surprise, it bore a faint insignia she recognized from local news segments, a stylized C with a diagonal slash. It was the emblem of Collins Enterprises, one of the most prominent conglomerates in the region, known for real estate, tech investments, and philanthropic initiatives. Lily's heart skipped a beat. Was Richard an employee there? Perhaps that explained his polished demeanor. She felt a flash of embarrassment, recalling how she had treated him like an ordinary acquaintance. But then, she reasoned, he had boarded a bus with no wallet, wearing simple clothes. He couldn't be anyone too high-ranking in that giant company, right? Unsure what to think, Lily slipped the card back into her pocket. She had no intention of calling him anyway. Even if he was some upper-level manager, why should she involve herself in his affairs? Her mother's health was her sole priority. When her shift ended, Lily felt her stomach clench with hunger. She headed to the cafeteria with the few coins she had. Barely enough for a small sandwich. She unwrapped the bread slowly, savoring each bite. Suddenly, her phone lit up with a text from her landlord, reminding her again about rent day. Lily swallowed hard and sipped her water. She wondered if she could ask the hospital for an advance on her stipend, but the administrative staff rarely granted exceptions. Once she finished her meager dinner, Lily gathered her things and trudged outside into the early evening light. She was halfway to the bus stop when a sleek black luxury car pulled up beside her. The tinted window slid down, and in the driver's seat sat a man about her age, wearing a crisp chauffeur uniform. "Excuse me, miss," he said politely. "Are you Lily Reyes?" She nearly dropped her tote bag. "Yes," she answered warily. The driver offered a professional smile. "I'm here on behalf of Mr. Richard Collins. He'd like to offer you a ride home." Lily's heart hammered. Richard Collins. That name. It was the name behind the famous Collins Enterprises. She had read about him in a newspaper once, a CEO known for transforming his family's company into a powerhouse. Suddenly, everything made sense. The quiet confidence, the impeccable suits, the random kindness. Lily was stunned. The man she had paid a bus fare for was Richard Collins, the CEO himself, famed for his business acumen. But why on earth would a CEO dress like an ordinary office worker and ride a public bus? None of it lined up in Lily's mind. She quickly shook her head, stepping back. "That's very kind, but I can't accept. Please tell Mr. Collins I appreciate the thought, but it's really not necessary." The driver hesitated. "He specifically asked me to come for you. He said you might refuse, and he told me to insist that you'd be safe. If it's about trust, I can—" "It's not that," Lily said, cheeks heating. "I just don't want to be a bother. I take the bus all the time." Across the street, a few passers-by paused to watch. Lily felt herself shrink under their curious gazes. The driver looked disappointed but nodded politely. "Understood, miss." Before he rolled up the window, he handed her a sealed envelope with a calm, courteous gesture. "Mr. Collins asked me to deliver this. He hopes you'll open it when you're ready." She stood in place as the car glided away into the traffic. For a moment, Lily couldn't move. She stared at the envelope, wondering if she should toss it or open it on the spot. With shaky hands, she slid a fingernail under the flap. Inside was a simple typed note. "Lily, I know you'll think this is too much, but I want to help. I'll wait for you to trust me. Richard." Tucked behind the note was a voucher for free medical checkups and pharmacy discounts at a reputable clinic, valid for an entire year. Lily gasped, tears prickling her eyes. She had heard of that clinic. It was a subsidiary of Collins Enterprises, known for its advanced equipment and high fees. This voucher could significantly reduce costs for her mother's ongoing treatment. Shaken, Lily folded the note back into the envelope and pressed it to her chest. She glanced around at the darkening street, the hum of the city offering no answers to her swirling thoughts. One thing was certain: everything she had assumed about Richard changed in that instant. The CEO with unlimited resources had chosen to approach her in secrecy, offering help she desperately needed. As Lily slowly headed to the bus stop, the envelope clutched in her hand, she grappled with warring emotions: gratitude for the chance to ease her mother's pain, guilt for accepting aid from a stranger, and an unshakable confusion about why this powerful man was so invested in her life. Little did she know that in a corner office overlooking the city, Richard was on the phone with his brother, Daniel Collins, trying to explain his unorthodox decision to investigate real life at ground level. Daniel's voice crackled with anger and disbelief. He dismissed Lily as just another parasite looking for a handout, but Richard cut him off, defending her innocence. This confrontation would be only the beginning of a much larger conflict, one that threatened not just Lily's future, but Richard's as well. The shadows of envy and family intrigue were closing in, setting the stage for a battle that would put Lily and Richard's fragile connection to the ultimate test. Lily sat on the edge of her sagging couch, staring at the small envelope clutched in her hands. She had read and reread the note twice already, her heart pounding with a mixture of hope and apprehension. Her mother dozed fitfully under a stack of blankets just a few feet away, her cheeks flushed with fever. Each shallow breath reminded Lily of the seriousness of her illness. Could this be the miracle Lily had been praying for? The Collins Enterprises voucher offered discounted health care at a private clinic that was leagues beyond her means. Yet guilt tugged at her conscience. Why did Richard Collins care so much about her struggles? Was he just fulfilling some corporate goodwill mission, or was there something deeper driving his kindness? Stifling a sigh, Lily quietly set the envelope aside, tiptoed into the kitchenette, and filled a glass of water. She couldn't forget her landlord's warnings about the rent, nor the hospital bills piling up. She was only an intern, barely making enough to keep lights on and a roof overhead. A private clinic, discounted or not, felt like an extravagant dream. Still, as she glanced at her mother's thin arms and the deep lines of pain etched around her eyes, Lily had to consider every possibility. "Lily?" her mother mumbled, stirring under the blankets. She hurried over, smoothing back her mother's graying hair. "I'm here, Mom. Are you in pain?" Her mother grimaced, trying to keep her composure. "It's just the usual ache. Nothing new." In Lily's heart, a familiar sorrow blossomed. No matter how gently her mother tried to dismiss her discomfort, Lily knew it was getting worse. The meager medication she had was no longer enough, and the wait time for proper diagnostic scans at the public hospital stretched endlessly. Maybe Richard's voucher could mean skipping that agonizing queue, sparing her mother from further deterioration. Lily hovered, deciding whether to mention the voucher, but pride held her back. Her mother always insisted that Lily shouldn't sacrifice her own future or rely on strangers. Maybe, Lily reasoned, she should wait until she had more information. She knew next to nothing about what a specialized exam or better medication might cost. After ensuring her mother had her evening dose and fresh water, Lily slipped into the tiny bedroom she used as a study. Her desk was strewn with textbooks, certification review guides, and a battered laptop. She flicked on a small lamp and stared at the notes she'd compiled from her nursing shifts. Studying on top of her exhausting schedule felt daunting, but each hour spent memorizing dosage charts and emergency procedures brought her closer to becoming a fully licensed nurse, a dream she clung to with unwavering resolve. Still, her focus splintered. Every few minutes, Lily's thoughts drifted to the envelope in the living room. She pictured Richard's poised demeanor and the sincerity in his eyes. Unlike so many she'd met, he didn't seem condescending. He didn't exude that typical pity she dreaded. Rather, he seemed quietly determined, as though helping her was some personal mission he refused to abandon. But why? Richard Collins stared at the city lights outside his penthouse window, the phone pressed to his ear. His older brother Daniel's voice crackled with impatience on the other end of the call. "You're lucky Father's on his business trip," Daniel said. "If he discovered you'd gone undercover on a public bus like a wannabe detective, do you think he'd approve? Have you lost your mind, Richard?" Richard kept his composure. He could practically see Daniel pacing in his office, tie loosened, the typical sneer on his lips. "I don't need Father's approval for everything," Richard responded evenly. "I wanted to see how real people live, the people we supposedly serve through our philanthropic divisions." "Or has that become a joke to you?" Daniel scoffed. "This nonsense about blending with the common folk? That was fine if it stayed a short whim, but now you've latched onto some nurse intern? You think she's not going to exploit you the second she realizes who you are?" A flicker of anger ignited in Richard's chest. "Lily didn't ask for anything. She refused my help more than once. I had to practically beg her to accept that clinic voucher." He paused, steadying his tone. "You're too quick to judge. She's been facing challenges we can't even comprehend." His brother's voice dropped, edged with disdain. "We'll see if you keep singing that tune when she empties your pockets. And let me remind you, Collins Enterprises has an image to maintain. This side project of yours, mingling with random people on the bus, it's unseemly. People might start questioning your leadership." Richard cut the call short, biting off a retort. He'd grown weary of Daniel's cynicism. His brother had long viewed any sign of empathy as a weakness. Setting his phone aside, Richard sank into an armchair, gaze lingering on the reflection of skyscrapers. He couldn't deny that part of him wondered if Daniel was right, if Lily might see him as nothing but a financial lifeline. But his instincts rebelled at that thought. He'd watched Lily. He'd seen her at the hospital, her gentle dedication, her reluctance to accept even the simplest gift. No, she was genuine. Of that, he was certain. "Mr. Collins?" A discreet voice broke his reverie. His personal assistant, Cynthia, stood in the doorway. "Shall I reschedule tomorrow's 8 a.m. meeting, or will you be attending?" Richard exhaled, pushing thoughts of Daniel aside. "Keep it on the calendar, and please contact the clinic about that voucher I issued for Lily Reyes. Make sure they follow up with her mother's case if she decides to use it." Cynthia nodded without surprise. She was used to Richard's personal philanthropic gestures, though typically they were handled through formal channels. This time, it was more direct, more personal. "I'll see to it, sir." After Cynthia left, Richard glanced at the tall stack of documents awaiting his signature, multi-million-dollar deals and new expansions for Collins Enterprises. Yet all he could focus on was the memory of Lily's hopeful yet wary expression. The business empire could wait another hour. Right now, his mind was too full of swirling questions about a nurse who had shown him kindness on a bus, and whom he was determined to help, whether she wanted his assistance or not. The next morning, Lily awoke to her phone vibrating. Still groggy, she fumbled to answer, worried it might be the landlord. Instead, a crisp female voice spoke, "Good morning, Ms. Reyes. My name is Dr. Miller from the Redwood Medical Clinic. I'm calling regarding your voucher from Collins Enterprises. We have an opening later this week. Would you be interested in bringing your mother for a thorough evaluation?" Lily sat up, adrenaline cutting through her sleepiness. She had assumed the voucher might give her a discount but not immediate attention from one of the city's most prestigious clinics. She took a breath, steadying herself. "Yes, of course I'd be interested. How much would it cost, though? The voucher can't possibly cover everything." Dr. Miller's tone was professional yet reassuring. "The voucher is quite comprehensive, Ms. Reyes. It includes labs, diagnostic scans, and a consultation with our specialist. There may be minor fees for extended treatment, but we can go over details during your visit. Shall we pencil you in for Friday at 10 a.m.? Lily forced herself not to cry. Friday was just 2 days away. Her mother had been on a waiting list at the public hospital for over a month. Here was a chance, an actual chance, to get answers and possibly a better treatment plan. "Yes, that would be wonderful. Thank you so much." After hanging up, Lily glanced at her sleeping mother, wanting to shout in relief and fear all at once. This was it. But how would her mother react? Proud, stubborn, and wary of strangers, she might protest. Lily couldn't blame her. Accepting such help felt like stepping onto quicksand. The little voice in Lily's head insisted, this is a lifeline for her mother. Don't let pride get in the way. She tapped her phone's cracked screen, considering for a moment whether to text that number on the embossed card. Maybe Richard should know she accepted the appointment. Then again, she hardly wanted to bother him. Her cheeks warmed at the thought of imposing more than she already had. At the hospital, Lily found herself absent-mindedly mixing bandages with medication labels, drawing teasing remarks from the senior nurses. She forced a small laugh each time, apologizing and blaming lack of sleep. But truly, her mind was miles away. She kept replaying the phone call from Dr. Miller, the collaboration that the clinic had with Richard's conglomerate, the concern in Richard's voice whenever they spoke. During lunch break, she retreated to a quiet corner of the hospital's rooftop garden, an area seldom visited except by staff craving fresh air. She perched on a bench. The city sprawled below her. A soft breeze rustled the leaves of potted plants, providing a brief respite from the sterile corridors. She tentatively pulled out the card with Richard's number. Could she really just dial it and say, "Thank you for the help"? Would that be appropriate? Or would he think she was now beholden to him? Lily's lips twisted in hesitation. She had always prided herself on standing on her own 2 feet. But had she reached the point where refusing help would be irresponsible, even selfish, given her mother's situation? Her phone battery was low, a cracked lightning icon flickering in the corner of the screen. She inhaled deeply and dialed the number, heart racing with each ring. "Yes?" came Richard's calm voice. She nearly hung up on impulse, but forced herself to speak. "Hi, Mr. Collins. Sorry, Richard, it's Lily, from the hospital." A beat of silence, then warmth filled his tone. "Lily, hello. It's good to hear from you." A swirl of emotions rushed through her. I wanted to say, thank you for the voucher. The clinic called me today and scheduled an appointment for my mom. It means a lot." Richard exhaled as though relieved. "I'm glad to hear it. And please, you don't need to thank me. It's the least I can do after all you've done for me." Lily blinked, confused. "But I only paid your bus fare, which wasn't—" He interrupted gently. "It wasn't about the money. I told you, you were one of the first people who actually showed me kindness without wanting anything in return. He paused, apparently trying to phrase something carefully. "I want to make sure your mother gets the best care possible. That's all." She smiled, despite herself, a warm feeling flickering in her chest. "Well, I appreciate it more than I can say. I just hope I can repay you somehow." "Don't think about repaying me," he replied. "Focus on your mother's health and on your nursing exam. By the way, how's that going? Any date set?" "2 months away," she said quietly, "trying to juggle it all, but I'm determined to pass." He chuckled softly. "I have no doubt you will. If there's anything else, resources, references, test prep materials, I could—" She cut him off, not wanting to overstep. "I'm okay, really. Thanks for offering. I won't keep you." They exchanged a few more polite words, then hung up. Lily sat there under the midday sun, phone in her lap, a strange peace settling over her. She didn't entirely understand Richard's motives, but for the first time in weeks, a glimmer of optimism rose inside her. Her mother might actually get the help she needed. And Lily? She would keep working, keep studying, and keep her promise to care for her mother, no matter what. On the other side of the city, in a glass-walled conference room on the top floor of the Collins Enterprises Tower, Daniel Collins tapped a pen irritably against the table. The meeting with potential investors had barely started, yet he could hardly focus. The conversation with Richard last night buzzed in his mind. What if Richard's naive do-gooder impulses jeopardized the next merger or overshadowed the brand image? Collins Enterprises prided itself on philanthropic work, yes, but under well-controlled conditions, press releases, planned campaigns, carefully selected beneficiaries. Daniel didn't like the idea of some random nurse capturing his younger brother's attention. That kind of personal involvement spelled trouble. The press would spin it as a sentimental CEO giving special treatment, or the tabloids might insinuate scandal. And beyond all that, Daniel's own ambitions for leadership within the company could be threatened if Richard's reputation took a hit. He forced a polite smile at an investor who was droning on about a new joint venture. But in his head, Daniel was already hatching a plan. If Richard insisted on meddling at ground level, so be it. But Daniel would ensure nothing compromised their next big acquisitions. If that meant steering Richard away from any deeper entanglement with Lily Reyes or painting her in a suspicious light, Daniel wouldn't hesitate. Mid-meeting, Daniel shot a discreet text to a contact in the city's press circuit, a small instruction to keep an eye on Richard's activities. If they found any hint of wrongdoing or vulnerability, Daniel wanted to know. If Lily had skeletons in her closet or even a whiff of controversy, he intended to use it as ammunition. After all, business was business, and Daniel refused to let sentiment or unpredictability threaten what the Collins family had built. Yes, the wheels were in motion, and as Daniel turned back to the investors wearing a mask of congeniality, he silently vowed that if Lily Reyes became a liability, she would be dealt with, one way or another. Meanwhile, Lily's day ended on a cautious note of hope. The bus ride home felt shorter, and in her bag rested a small folder she'd borrowed from the hospital library containing specialized notes for her upcoming nursing exam. Even in her exhaustion, she caught herself smiling faintly, imagining a future where her mother felt better and Lily had a stable career. The night sky was a canopy of stars as she walked the last block to her apartment. A cool breeze ruffled the hair at her neck, and for once, she allowed herself to breathe in the stillness without worry. She'd need to steel herself for the next challenge, convincing her mother to attend the clinic appointment, bracing for potential hidden costs, perhaps dealing with awkward questions about how they'd managed such a high-end referral. But at least now, Lily saw a path forward. Little did she realize, events were moving behind the scenes. Daniel's suspicions, The looming corporate acquisitions and the swirling forces of jealousy were aligning in subtle, threatening ways. She might have found an unexpected ally in Richard, but the path to healing her mother and safeguarding her own future would test Lily's resilience in ways she could hardly imagine. And as the faint hum of city traffic lulled her to sleep, she had no way of knowing just how close the storm clouds were gathering. Early dawn light filtered through the narrow gaps in Lily's old window blinds, illuminating the small living room where she slept to keep an eye on her mother. Despite nodding off late after studying, Lily's eyes snapped open the moment she heard her mother cough, a raspy, lung-deep sound that twisted worry into Lily's heart. She set aside the blanket, noticing how chilly the apartment felt, and hurried over to check her mother's temperature. "Morning," her mother whispered, weak but trying to force a smile. Even in such frail health, she managed to tease, "You're hovering again, Lily." Lily gently placed a thermometer under her mother's tongue. "Can't help it," she murmured. "I'd be a lousy nurse if I ignored you." Truth was, she was also determined not to let any symptom pass unnoticed, especially with the Redwood Medical Clinic appointment looming. She just prayed her mother's condition wouldn't worsen in the next 48 hours. After reading the thermometer, still too high, though not dangerously so, Lily helped her mother drink a little water. She was about to mention the private clinic appointment but hesitated. Would it cause her mother more anxiety right now? Maybe it was better to wait until she felt a little stronger before discussing the details. "Try to rest," Lily said quietly, adjusting the blankets. She then slipped out the door to catch her bus for another hospital shift. At the bus stop, Lily stood with her arms folded tightly, trying to stay warm in the crisp morning air. She checked the time on her phone. Nearly 6 a.m. She had a good 30 minutes before she needed to be at work, but she liked arriving early, ensuring she could handle any last-minute requests from the head nurse. As she waited, her eyes scanned the corner where a black car had once appeared on Richard's orders. Part of her still couldn't believe how fast her life had shifted in less than a week. One moment, she was scraping together every spare coin just to get by. Now she had an appointment for her mother at a state-of-the-art clinic, courtesy of a powerful CEO she met under the strangest circumstances. The bus rattled up to the curb and Lily climbed aboard, ignoring the curious stares of a few fellow passengers she recognized. She could almost hear them thinking, "That's the girl who once helped the man with no fare." No one spoke of it openly, but every now and then she sensed the ripple of rumor. She forced herself not to dwell on it. Her day demanded focus and fortitude, and her mother's well-being depended on Lily's ability to keep a clear head. At the hospital, the morning began much like any other. Lily signed in, exchanged greetings with staff, and immediately set about her tasks. First, she inventoried medication in Ward A, then checked vitals for 3 post-surgery patients. She hardly had time to breathe until mid-morning, when she ducked into the nurse's lounge for a quick sip of water. No sooner had she leaned against a locker than Marie, one of the senior nurses, stepped in. "Lily," Marie began, her tone a hushed mix of curiosity and caution. "We heard you might be taking your mother to Redwood Clinic. Word travels fast around here, you know." Lily almost choked on her water. She'd told only one friend, another intern, about the appointment. But rumors indeed spread quickly. She inhaled, trying to keep her composure. "Yes, they called me with an appointment. It's a long story." Marie nodded, sympathetic. "I'm happy for you. That clinic has incredible specialists. I just hope it won't break your wallet." She hesitated. "Though I also heard, this is none of my business, so forgive me, but someone said a top figure at Collins Enterprises arranged this? Is that true?" Lily's cheeks warmed under the fluorescent lights. She could sense Marie's unspoken question. Why would a powerful corporation single out an intern for such favor? "It's complicated," Lily said, deciding to be honest but not overly detailed. "I helped someone from that company and he wanted to return the kindness. Nothing more." Marie, kind-eyed, patted her arm. "Well, dear, you've always worked so hard. If you get a bit of luck, that's nothing to feel guilty about. Just be careful. People around here might start whispering." Lily thanked her, feeling both gratitude for Marie's concern and a sting of caution. The last thing she wanted was for her colleagues, people she admired, to think she was using connections or seeking special treatment. She steeled herself, deciding that her mother's health was more important than any workplace gossip. Richard, meanwhile, sat in a conference room at Collins Enterprises headquarters, finalizing quarterly strategies with a team of executives. Charts and graphs filled the projector screen, detailing profits, philanthropic budgets, and new acquisitions. From an outsider's perspective, Richard appeared as calm and collected as always. He had a knack for leading with steady confidence. But inside, his mind drifted. "Mr. Collins," his CFO asked, drawing his attention back to the meeting. "About the Redwood expansions, we need your sign-off on reallocation of philanthropic funds. Should we proceed with the new clinic outreach, or hold off until after the merger announcement?" Richard flipped through a binder, scanning the proposed budget. The Redwood expansions were meant to increase healthcare access. He thought of Lily and her mother, of the countless others who lacked resources. "We proceed," he said firmly, "and ensure the philanthropic division maintains its full budget for community clinics. Goodwill can't be an afterthought." A short while later, Richard excused himself from the meeting, stepping into his office. He closed the glass door behind him and called Cynthia, his assistant. "Any updates on the Redwood Medical Clinic appointment for Lily Reyes's mother?" Cynthia checked her tablet. "They're expecting her tomorrow, sir. Everything is confirmed. The staff has been briefed to provide full support. Also, the clinic director asked if you'll be attending any portion of the consultation." He considered it for a moment. A part of him wanted to be present, to show Lily he truly cared, that his help wasn't just a corporate formality, but he also knew that might be overwhelming or even embarrassing for her. She had her pride, and he respected that. "No," he finally said. "Let them focus on her mother's care. I don't want to make it a spectacle." Cynthia nodded. "Understood. Also, your brother's office called. He'd like a moment with you today. Shall I schedule something?" Richard's jaw tightened. No doubt Daniel wanted to interrogate him about Redwood or Lily yet again. "Yes," he answered, exhaling. "Set something for late afternoon. I can't keep putting him off." Across town, Daniel Collins sat in a private lounge, swirling a tumbler of whiskey while he listened to a well-dressed private investigator recount Lily's background. They spoke in low, clipped tones, aware that prying eyes might lurk even in high-end bars. "She's an intern at the city hospital," the PI said, tapping a folder. "Lives in a run-down part of town. Takes care of her mother, who's chronically ill. Father isn't in the picture, died years ago. Financially unstable, behind on rent. So far, no criminal record, no suspicious activity." Daniel's expression remained dispassionate. "Nothing that suggests she's exploiting Richard or has ulterior motives?" The PI shrugged. "All evidence says she's genuinely overworked, decent reputation, no sign of manipulation. The only unusual thing is how quickly she got an appointment at Redwood Clinic after meeting your brother, but that was his doing, apparently." Daniel drummed his fingers on the table. "So the official story is she's just a poor nurse intern who spontaneously helped Richard, and now he's returning the favor. You're certain she's not working an angle? She seems sincere. Even her neighbors say she's never asked for handouts." Daniel's lips thinned in annoyance. "Well, sincerity can turn to greed once she realizes the potential. Keep an eye on her. If anything changes, any large deposits in her account, expensive purchases, let me know immediately." The PI nodded, gathering his notes. "Understood. So far, Lily Reyes appears—" Daniel raised a hand, eyes glinting with cold resolve. "I said keep looking." The investigator nodded, hurriedly leaving. Daniel tossed back the last of his whiskey, scowling. If Lily truly was as earnest as the reports indicated, his plan to paint her as a gold digger might fail. But he wasn't done yet. People had secrets, or they could be cornered into mistakes. And if Lily became a threat to the carefully orchestrated Collins brand, and by extension, Daniel's ambitions, he would make certain she was removed from Richard's life. That evening, Lily sat at the kitchen table, coaxing her mother to eat some soup. Outside, the neighborhood bustled with modest activity, children playing, neighbors gossiping by the stoop. The flicker of a dim overhead bulb illuminated Lily's worry and her mother's weariness. Eventually, Lily cleared her throat. "Mom, I have to tell you something important. I got us an appointment at Redwood Medical Clinic for tomorrow. They're known for advanced treatments. They might be able to pinpoint exactly what's been causing all these complications." Her mother's eyes widened. "Redwood? Lily, that place is too expensive. You know we can't." A coughing fit forced her to pause. Lily rubbed her back gently. "I know," Lily whispered. "But I got a voucher. It covers a lot of the cost. Maybe not everything, but enough to finally get a real diagnosis." Confusion mingled with pride in her mother's gaze. "A voucher? From who?" Lily hesitated. She wasn't eager to dredge up the entire story of Richard and how he'd orchestrated this. She feared her mother's pride would bristle, so she offered a simple version of the truth. "A man I helped put me in touch with Redwood. He has connections, and he insisted on helping." Her mother's brows knitted. "Why would a stranger do that for you?" "It's complicated, but I promise there are no strings attached," Lily said, seeing her mother's stern expression. "We have to try, Mom. You've been getting worse, and the waiting list at the public hospital could take months. Let's do this, for your health." A moment of tense silence. Then her mother closed her eyes, nodding slowly. "All right, if you're sure, but I don't want us going into debt." Lily hugged her gently, relief easing her tight chest. "We'll handle it," she assured. "Somehow we will." The next morning brought a swirl of activity. Lily arranged for an entire day off from her intern duties, with Marie and the other nurses promising to cover her. She rose before the sun, coaxing her mother to eat a small breakfast, then carefully helped her dress in warm clothes. When a taxi Lily had scheduled arrived, she didn't dare ask Richard for a car service. She guided her mother down the building's rickety stairs, each step an effort. The drive to Redwood Clinic felt endless, weaving through busy intersections. Lily clutched her mother's hand, mentally reviewing each question she needed to ask the doctors. At last, the clinic's sleek facade loomed into view, all glass and polished steel. A sense of awe mingled with Lily's nerves. It felt like entering another world. Inside, the reception area was serene, tasteful artwork, soft lighting, and comfortable chairs. A receptionist greeted them with a polite smile, verifying Lily's name and quickly guiding them to a private waiting room. Lily's mother looked around, uncertain, her posture timid. They sat, the hush of the clinic broken only by occasional footsteps. Soon Dr. Miller emerged, wearing a crisp white coat. "Ms. Reyes?" she said warmly, extending a hand. "I'm glad you could come. And you must be Lily's mother. I'm Dr. Miller. Let's get you settled in for some initial tests." They were escorted through a corridor to a spacious examination room, outfitted with equipment Lily had only seen in medical magazines. Her mother lay down on a comfortable exam bed while Dr. Miller and a nurse began preliminary checks, vital signs, oxygen levels, reflexes. Lily observed anxiously. The staff's professionalism was impressive, but she couldn't shake the feeling of being an outsider in a place meant for affluent clientele. Over the next few hours, they proceeded with lab work, imaging scans, and a thorough consultation. Each step felt surreal. Lily's mother stiffened whenever a nurse asked about payment details, but Dr. Miller would smoothly reassure them that the voucher covered the procedures they needed. Lily could almost see her mother's defensive pride war with her relief. Finally, Dr. Miller asked Lily to wait in the corridor while the last scan was conducted. Leaning against the pristine wall, Lily exhaled shakily. She closed her eyes, thinking of how they'd waited months for such comprehensive tests at the public hospital with no end in sight. Now, in a single morning, her mother had undergone the complete battery. Whether the results were good or bad, at least they'd know. "You look pale," said a gentle voice. Lily opened her eyes to find a passing nurse offering a concerned look. "Should I get you some water?" "I'm fine," Lily replied softly. She forced a small smile. "Just nerves." The nurse nodded sympathetically before disappearing into another room. Left alone again, Lily pulled out her phone. A single text message blinked on the screen. "Unknown number." She frowned, tapping it. The message read, "Everything going well at the clinic? Let me know if you need anything else." Lily's heart twisted. She should have guessed he'd be checking in. She typed a quick thank you, letting him know tests were underway. A moment later, Richard replied with a simple, "I'm glad. Take care, Lily." She stared at those few words on the screen, feeling a swell of gratitude tempered by the fear that he was doing too much. She typed out a response, "We really appreciate your help," and then stopped, her thumb hovering. Should she share details? She decided to keep it short. She couldn't risk leaning on him too heavily. By early afternoon, Dr. Miller asked Lily to join her and her mother in a consulting office. The walls displayed framed diplomas from prestigious universities. Lily swallowed hard, bracing herself. "First," Dr. Miller began, "we've identified a few complications in your mother's respiratory and cardiovascular functions. There's inflammation, possibly an autoimmune component. We want more tests to confirm specifics, but we can start with a targeted treatment plan." Lily's mother listened in grim silence. Lily asked question after question, her medical knowledge helping her grasp terms that might have overwhelmed another patient. The bottom line, her mother's condition was serious, but potentially manageable with the right specialists and a strict regimen of medication and therapy. Dr. Miller's gaze was kind but direct. Our next steps would typically involve advanced immunotherapy, some infusion treatments, and close monitoring. The Redwood Foundation can subsidize a portion due to your voucher, but there may be additional costs. We'll do our best to keep it manageable. Lily's mother tensed, looking at Lily with stricken eyes. I can't ask you to do this. We don't have that kind of money." Lily squeezed her mother's hand. "Let's just see the estimate. Maybe we can figure something out." The doctor nodded. "We'll prepare detailed recommendations and cost outlines. But for now, I do suggest you begin a short course of medication right away. That alone might ease her symptoms significantly." They left the office with a stack of pamphlets and a sense of cautious hope. Lily guided her mother back to the waiting room where a nurse promptly brought out the first round of prescribed medications. After signing a few forms, miraculously showing zero cost thanks to the voucher, Lily helped her mother outside to hail a taxi. Her mother's eyes remained distant throughout the ride home. "I can't let you drown in debt for me," she murmured at one point, her voice trembling. "All we've had is each other. I refuse to let you ruin your future." Lily blinked away the sting of tears. "We'll handle it, Mom. There's still some financial help from Redwood, and maybe we can arrange a payment plan for anything extra." She didn't dare mention Richard again, fearing her mother's pride. "All that matters is you get better." Reluctantly, her mother nodded, turning to stare at the city passing by in a blur. By the time they made it home, Lily was exhausted, physically and emotionally. She settled her mother onto the couch, made sure she was comfortable, then went to fetch water. As she did, her phone buzzed again, this time with a call. She answered softly, stepping into the cramped hallway for privacy. "Lily?" Richard's voice, warm with concern. "I didn't want to bother you earlier, but I just wanted to see how the visit went." Lily closed her eyes, relief mixing with an odd guilt for relying on him so much. They found multiple issues, but they have a plan. We'll need more follow-ups and maybe some advanced treatments, but it's progress. I'm glad, Richard said, sounding genuinely relieved. If there's anything you're worried about, medical bills, therapy sessions, I can... She cut him off, voice firm despite her weary tone. You've done enough, truly. I can't let you shoulder more. An exhale on his end. It's not about shouldering. I want to help. But if you prefer I step back, I understand. Lily's hand tightened around the phone. Part of her wanted to say yes, keep stepping away, maintain boundaries. Another part recognized that, for her mother's sake, maybe letting him help was the smarter choice. Conflicted, she simply said, let's take it one step at a time. I'm grateful, more than you know, but I also have to be careful. A soft pause. You're right. One step at a time, Richard echoed. Please let me know if anything changes. They ended the call, leaving Lily in the silence of the hallway. She thought of how many nights she'd prayed for a break, a chance to help her mother without sacrificing everything. Now that a chance had arrived, it came in the form of a man whose life was worlds apart from hers, a man whose family's empire dwarfed her wildest imaginings. Lily returned to her mother, who had fallen into a light doze, medication evidently helping her breathe more easily. Outside, the sun was sinking, painting the street in copper hues. For now, Lily decided, she would embrace this fragile moment of optimism. Tomorrow could bring new worries, new tensions, especially if gossip at the hospital escalated, or if Richard's family took issue with his generosity. But for the moment, Lily felt something she hadn't felt in months, a spark of real hope. Across town in his high-rise office, Richard turned away from the window after hanging up with Lily. He stared at the plans for the Redwood expansions, mind teeming with strategies to quietly cover any additional costs for Lily's mother. Meanwhile, Daniel's scheduled meeting lurked on the horizon, threatening to cast a shadow over everything. Neither Lily nor Richard suspected just how fiercely Daniel intended to intervene, nor how quickly he would move to undercut their fragile alliance. 2 days after Lily's mother's initial visit to Redwood Medical Clinic, a hint of relief finally reached their small apartment. Her mother's breathing had eased under the new medication. The stubborn cough that once rattled through the night had softened into something more manageable. The improvement was modest but tangible enough for Lily to hope that, with sustained treatment, her mother might regain some strength. Still, the realities of Lily's everyday life pressed on her. Rent loomed closer, grocery funds barely sufficed, and her nurse certification exam drew nearer. Late one night, Lily sat hunched at her rickety desk, her textbooks open, eyes darting between lines of complex medical terminology. Her mother was asleep in the adjoining room, a quiet hush over the apartment. Lily tried to focus, flipping through a particularly dense section on pharmacology, but her mind kept wandering to Richard, his unwavering support and the tension he seemed to face from his own family. At times, Lily wondered if it would be better for him if she simply slipped out of his life, refusing any more help. But each time she thought so, she recalled her mother's shallow breaths and the way Redwood's specialists showed real promise. And wasn't that worth swallowing her pride? With a small shake of her head, Lily forced herself back to her notes, determined to make the most of whatever opportunities came her way, for her mother's sake, if not her own. Meanwhile, Richard braced himself for his scheduled meeting with Daniel. The afternoon sky glowed behind the tinted windows of Collins Enterprises' top floor, and from his office doorway, Richard could see Daniel standing in the conference room. His brother's stance seemed stiff with impatience. Richard gave a subtle, composed sigh, then walked in, greeting Daniel politely. They sat at a long, polished table, a city panorama stretching behind them. For a moment, Daniel tapped a pen against the gleaming wood surface, as though deciding how direct he wished to be. Finally, he spoke. I've reviewed our upcoming mergers, the Redwood expansions, and your philanthropic ventures, he began. Everything looks adequate on paper. Richard set his jaw, recognizing that Daniel had more to say. All right, then what's on your mind? Daniel's lips twitched in a mirthless smile. Let's cut to the chase. You've been personally involved in one specific Redwood case. Lily Reyes, correct? You paid for her mother's consultation and presumably more. If it's a philanthropic gesture, it should go through the usual channels. But it hasn't. Richard regarded his brother calmly. I'm allowed discretion in how I manage certain philanthropic funds. This is no different. Oh, but it is different, Daniel countered, leaning forward. You're mixing personal interest with corporate resources, and word is spreading. Investors, board members, even staff are curious. They wonder if there's a hidden reason for you to spend so much time and money on this young intern. A flush of anger warmed Richard's neck. There's nothing inappropriate going on, if that's what you're implying. She helped me. I'm returning the kindness. Daniel feigned a thoughtful look. Sure, but how long before someone interprets it differently? You're a CEO with a certain image. People might assume you and Lily have a personal liaison, or they could think she's extorting you. He raised a hand before Richard could interrupt. I'm just stating possibilities. We can't afford scandal, especially not when we're about to finalize major acquisitions. Richard's voice hardened. I won't let you smear her. She's done nothing wrong. And if you plan on interfering with her mother's treatment— Daniel shook his head. I'm only cautioning you, little brother. If you choose to continue, fine. But don't blame me if the board or the media starts sniffing around and your little favor blows up into headlines. You know as well as I do, public perception can cripple a deal. A tense silence ensued. Richard's gaze flicked to the glass walls where employees bustled beyond. He didn't want to argue more in such a public place. Was there anything else? Daniel sighed, feigning concern. Just be careful, that's all. He rose, straightening his suit jacket. I'd hate to see you undermine all we've built, or tarnish your own leadership. Richard said nothing. The moment Daniel left the room, he clenched his fists under the table, wrestling with frustration. He knew his brother too well. Daniel's so-called warning was more like a veiled threat, a promise of trouble should Richard not comply with the family's controlled image. But Richard refused to abandon Lily or her mother. He would just have to be cautious. During the following week, Lily's mother underwent more tests at Redwood. Some results were promising, suggesting possible treatment routes that might grant her a more stable quality of life. But with each new piece of good news came a sobering reminder of the costs. Even with the Redwood subsidy and the Collins voucher, Lily worried about potential expenses for long-term care. She attempted to juggle shifts at the hospital, find extra side gigs, and keep her mind steady for her upcoming exams. Sleep became a luxury she could rarely afford. By day, Lily maintained her usual calm demeanor, distributing medication, comforting new patients, and assisting senior nurses with complicated procedures. Yet hospital gossip fluttered around her like gnats. She heard the whispers in break rooms, speculations that she had a secret benefactor, that she was lucky or possibly involved with a powerful donor. Whenever Lily caught snippets of those rumors, her stomach knotted. She wondered if she should address them head-on or just let them pass. One afternoon, while she was preparing to administer IV fluids to an elderly patient, her co-worker Grace gave her a sympathetic glance. "Lily, people are talking," Grace said, voice low so the patient couldn't overhear. "I keep telling them you'd never do anything unethical, but the stories keep spiraling." Lily forced a smile, focusing on adjusting the IV drip. "I can't control what people think," she murmured. "I just hope it doesn't affect my internship." Grace gently placed a hand on Lily's shoulder. "It won't. Not if you stay professional and keep doing your job well. Let them gossip. You have a good heart, and your work shows it." Grateful tears stung Lily's eyes, but she blinked them away, nodding. "Thank you," she whispered. That evening, Lily returned home exhausted, the weight of endless responsibilities pressing down. Her mother was asleep, the new medication working better than expected. Lily tiptoed into the kitchen, flicking on the single overhead bulb. There, on the counter, she spotted an official-looking envelope from the landlord. Her chest constricted. She ripped it open. A reminder that her rent was past due, and a notice of possible eviction if she didn't catch up within a week. Her heart pounded. She'd been scraping money together, but with her mother's medical needs, it hadn't been enough. She slumped onto a stool, reading the notice over and over as though looking for a loophole. None appeared. Without consciously deciding to, Lily found herself pulling out her phone. She scrolled through her messages, seeing the one from Richard earlier that day. Just checking in. Hope you're okay. She didn't want to be the type of person who called him every time trouble arose, but the eviction threat felt like a tidal wave about to crash. She looked at her mother's thin form on the couch, then at the letter trembling in her hands. Finally, she typed, "Bad news about my rent. Might be evicted in a week if I can't pay. Didn't know who else to turn to." She almost deleted it. Shame burned her cheeks, but her mother coughed in her sleep, and Lily hit send. She told herself it was only to vent, not to beg. She was just so tired. Maybe Richard would have advice, or a short-term solution. The bubble of her message vanished, and she felt simultaneously terrified and relieved. Richard received Lily's text in the middle of reviewing financial statements. His heart clenched as he read her short, desperate note. A swirl of protective instinct rose in him. Lily always avoided asking for personal help. This message suggested she was at the end of her rope. He immediately dialed her number. She answered in a shaky whisper, explaining that her mother was asleep. "I'm so sorry you're dealing with this," Richard said gently. "Can you tell me the amount you owe?" She hesitated, voice breaking. "I'm behind almost 2 months plus fees. With my intern's paycheck, hospital bills, groceries, I just couldn't catch up." Richard didn't waste time. "Text me the landlord's contact information and the amount. I'll handle it tonight." Lily tensed, imagining him paying it all off in one swoop. Could she allow that? I can't let you just—" He interrupted, tone firm yet kind. "Lily, you have every right to be independent, but not at the cost of losing your home. Let me help. You can pay me back whenever you're stable, or consider it part of your mother's medical support. Either way, you need a roof over your head to keep caring for her." Her eyes welled with tears. She cradled the phone, relief battling guilt. "All right," she whispered. "I'll send you the info. Thank you, Richard." After they ended the call, Lily slumped against the wall, phone clutched to her chest. Every fiber of her pride wanted to protest, but reality demanded she accept. If she was evicted, her mother's fragile condition could worsen drastically. She told herself this was only temporary, that she'd find extra shifts or a second job to repay Richard. In a suite at the top of the Collins Tower, Richard called his personal accountant, instructing her to pay off Lily's arrears and ensure the landlord extended her lease. He felt no qualms about the cost. He had more wealth than he could ever spend. But a sense of protectiveness filled him, along with the nagging worry that Daniel might learn of this and cause trouble. Sure enough, Daniel was informed within hours. One of the accountants, not realizing the sensitivity, mentioned a sudden housing payment for a Reyes in the philanthropic records. Daniel was quick to connect the dots. He allowed himself a smug smile. This was exactly the sort of personal entanglement he'd warned Richard about. With the final acquisitions around the corner, Daniel couldn't risk a rumor that the CEO was funneling money to a random intern. He decided to strike before the story broke uncontrollably. After a few phone calls, Daniel arranged a private meeting with Lily's landlord. If he could coerce or bribe the landlord to give a particular statement or to raise some suspicion about Lily, he could craft a narrative that Lily had manipulated Richard into bailing her out. Then, if push came to shove, Daniel would use that story as leverage to force Richard to retreat from this charity case. On a cloudy evening, Daniel's driver pulled up in front of the landlord's modest suburban house. Daniel stepped out, the faint drizzle beading on his expensive overcoat. He walked to the door with a purposeful stride, a manila folder tucked under his arm. The landlord, a balding man in his 50s, answered with visible nervousness. He recognized the name Collins and understood the magnitude of wealth and power behind it. "I hear you received payment for Miss Reyes's rent," Daniel said smoothly, stepping inside the living room without waiting for an invitation. His tone was casual, like a banker discussing interest rates. "I want a copy of that transaction, and any relevant documents. My associates have a keen interest in verifying details." The landlord fidgeted with the doorframe. Well, I was surprised. The money came from a corporate account. Is something wrong, Mr. Collins?" Daniel gave a polite smile that didn't reach his eyes. "We simply need clarity to protect all parties. If Miss Reyes misrepresented her relationship with my brother or engaged in any questionable activity, we might have legal grounds to reevaluate that payment." The landlord swallowed, sweat beading on his brow. I just took the money. I don't know any details about her arrangement with your brother. She always paid on time before she fell behind. Seems like a nice girl, caring for her sick mother." Daniel feigned a kind nod. "Indeed, she might be. But sometimes nice faces hide manipulative intentions. So let's be sure everything is in order. Shall we?" He placed the manila folder on the landlord's coffee table, opening it to reveal a standard non-disclosure agreement. "Sign here, and you'll receive a small stipend for your time. In return, if anyone, reporters, investigators, asks about the transaction, you'll direct them to my office. Understood?" The landlord stared at the folder, dabbing his forehead. "But I don't want any trouble." "Nor do I," Daniel assured, though his stare was unyielding. "This is a simple measure. Comply, and you won't regret it." Moments later, the landlord scrawled his signature. Daniel gave him a curt nod, left behind a sealed envelope of hush money, and walked out into the drizzling night. A triumphant sensation swirled inside him. Step by step, he was ensuring that if Lily became a threat, he could turn the tables with a controlled version of events. And if she wasn't a threat, then no harm done. Either way, Daniel intended to keep the upper hand. Oblivious to these machinations, Lily woke up the next day to a text from her landlord. "Rent settled. Your lease is extended for now." She nearly sagged in relief, whispering a quiet thank you to Richard in her mind. But an uneasy feeling nagged her. Every time she accepted help, it seemed the situation grew more complicated. She hoped that in the days ahead she could find a way to stand on her own 2 feet without letting the swirling rumors and hidden agendas drown her. Yet as Lily prepared for another grueling day at the hospital, determined to push forward, the forces aligned by Daniel threatened to ensnare her in a web of suspicion and manipulation far beyond her control. A bright ray of morning sun streamed across Lily's small kitchen table, catching dust motes in a golden haze. It was one of those rare mornings when Lily didn't have to rush out to the hospital for an early shift. Instead, she was home, quietly flipping through a stack of flashcards for her upcoming nursing certification exam. Every so often, she glanced over to check on her mother, who was resting on the couch, eyes closed but breathing much more peacefully than before. The new medications from Redwood had started to make a notable difference. Her mother had even managed to eat a small breakfast, something that just weeks ago felt unthinkable. Despite this bit of hope, Lily's brow furrowed with lingering anxiety. Though Richard's intervention had staved off her eviction, a new tension clung to her chest. Accepting his help for rent might have solved one emergency, but it also deepened her feeling of indebtedness. And the whispering at the hospital had only grown. She knew that if people learned about the rent payment, the gossip would intensify, maybe even reaching the hospital's administration. She couldn't afford any stains on her record, especially so close to finishing her internship. This morning, though, she had a few precious hours to study. She tried to focus on the flashcards, normal pediatric vital signs, adult dosage formulas, infection control protocols. She'd get through 5 or 6 before her mind drifted back to Richard or her mother or the next Redwood appointment. Eventually, she sighed and set the cards down, rubbing her temples. Her phone buzzed. She picked it up, half expecting a message from the hospital about covering someone's shift. Instead, it was a text from Grace, her co-worker. "Hey Lily, hope you're doing well. Weird rumor going around that hospital management wants to review your performance. Be ready. Some formal meeting might be scheduled. Not sure why, but you know how it is. Just wanted to give you a heads up." Lily's pulse quickened. A formal review? She knew it wasn't routine. Interns typically had evaluations, but not random, short-notice ones. Her heart sank as she recalled the swirling gossip about her supposed benefactor. Could the rumors have reached the higher-ups? She shook her head, trying to keep calm. Maybe it was a simple oversight or a standard check-in. She typed back a quick thanks, but the knot in her stomach wouldn't loosen. Across the room, her mother stirred, blinking at Lily with mild concern. "Everything okay, sweetie?" Lily forced a reassuring smile. "Just work stuff, a possible evaluation." She reached for a glass of water, offering it to her mother. "How are you feeling?" Her mother shrugged, adjusting the blanket. "Better, mostly. Just a bit weak." She paused, gaze flicking to Lily's phone. Was it that man again? The one who helped with rent? Lily set her glass down, startled. She hadn't told her mother all the details about how exactly the rent got paid, only that she'd managed to resolve it. But her mother was perceptive. "No, it was a co-worker," Lily replied, not wishing to lie. "But yes, he did help. I hope you're not upset. I had no choice." An uneasy silence. Her mother's features softened. "I just worry you're bearing too much alone, and that this man, Richard, right, might be doing more than you're comfortable accepting. Don't let pride stop you from getting help, but be careful, Lily." Lily nodded, relieved her mother wasn't outright objecting. "I will, Mom, I promise." After that, Lily gathered her notes again, determined to focus. She had only a short window before leaving for her midday shift. If the hospital truly planned a performance review, she needed to be at her best. Meanwhile, in the top-floor corridors of Collins Enterprises, Richard sat at his desk, scanning through various philanthropic reports. A polite knock on the door preceded his assistant, Cynthia, stepping in. "Sir, there's a short item requiring your attention," she said, offering a folder. "It pertains to a donation flagged under your discretionary fund, specifically the one covering Miss Reyes's rental situation." Richard felt a twinge of annoyance. Ever since he'd authorized that payment, small administrative queries kept popping up as though certain people wanted a paper trail. Possibly Daniel's doing. With a measured sigh, he opened the folder and found a request for additional documentation. It included an internal note. "Please confirm the nature of the relationship between donor and beneficiary to comply with philanthropic guidelines." He tossed the paper aside in frustration. This was precisely the kind of bureaucratic friction he didn't need. "Handle it as an emergency housing grant," Richard told Cynthia calmly. "Note that it falls under the same category as medical support. If the compliance team has questions, direct them to me personally." Cynthia nodded, expression neutral. "Understood, sir." She hesitated before adding, "Your brother's office also called again. They want to confirm a joint appearance at next week's press briefing for the Redwood expansions." Richard exhaled, standing up to pace by the window. He knew Daniel was pushing for a show of unity, especially with the looming acquisitions. However, a joint appearance would likely be overshadowed by Daniel's prying or new barbs about Lily. After a brief pause, he turned back to Cynthia. "Tell them I'll attend the briefing, but only the Redwood portion. I'm not getting dragged into any Q&A about my personal decisions." Cynthia made a quick note, then excused herself. Richard stared out at the city for a few beats, phone in hand. He considered sending Lily a reassuring text, some small comfort that he could handle the administrative fuss. But he decided not to burden her further. She had enough on her plate. Later that day, Lily arrived at the hospital an hour before her scheduled shift. She'd hoped to find a quiet corner or check in with Marie for any updates regarding the rumored performance review. The moment she stepped inside, though, she found an official memo pinned to the staff bulletin board. Intern Lily Reyes, please report to the administrative office at 2:00 p.m. for a review meeting. Her chest tightened. That gave her barely any time to settle in. She hurried to the locker area to change into scrubs, crossing paths with Grace, who wore an apologetic expression. "I tried to warn you," Grace whispered, patting Lily's shoulder. "Administration's being cagey about the reason. Good luck, okay?" Heart pounding, Lily slipped into her scrubs, forced a calm facade, and wove through the corridors until she reached the administrative office. She was greeted by Ms. Dela Cruz, a middle-aged woman with a stern demeanor and reading glasses perched on her nose. Seated next to Ms. Dela Cruz was the hospital's HR representative, a younger man who looked equally tense. "Miss Reyes," Ms. Dela Cruz began, motioning for Lily to take a seat. "We're here to discuss certain concerns that have arisen regarding potential conflicts of interest and your recent personal circumstances. We'd like your cooperation in clarifying these matters." Lily's stomach lurched. Conflicts of interest? She swallowed hard, hands clasped tightly in her lap. "Of course, I'll answer whatever I can." Ms. Dela Cruz folded her hands on the desk. "We've received anonymous queries. Let's call them complaints, hinting that you might be receiving financial support from an external benefactor in exchange for privileges at this hospital." Heat rose to Lily's cheeks. She could guess the rumor that she was being bribed or favored, possibly giving the hospital's resources in return. "That's not true," Lily said, struggling to keep her voice steady. My mother is sick. A philanthropic voucher helped me get her treatment at Redwood, but it had nothing to do with the hospital's resources or me granting any special favors." The HR representative adjusted his papers. "We also have noted that your rent arrears were settled recently by an entity associated with the same philanthropic source. Could you confirm how that arrangement came to be?" Lily fought the urge to sink into the chair. She explained in guarded terms that she had befriended someone from Collins Enterprises, anonymizing Richard as much as possible. She described paying his bus fare, the subsequent conversation, and his offer to help her mother. "He's just a kind person," Lily concluded quietly. "There's no contract or condition requiring me to misuse hospital property or break any ethical boundaries." Ms. Dela Cruz eyed Lily warily. "You see how this might look, yes? An intern suddenly receiving large sums of money or expensive medical assistance. There are concerns about impropriety or exploitation. Even if you haven't done anything wrong, appearances can be damaging." "Damaging to whom?" Lily asked, a tremor betraying her frustration. "I've given this hospital my best efforts. I've never asked for special shifts or demanded preferential treatment. My mother's health is all that matters." The HR rep cleared his throat. "The hospital's reputation is paramount. We need to ensure no staff member, intern or otherwise, is involved in questionable financial deals that could implicate the institution. If we find no wrongdoing, then this is just a standard interview, but we have to be thorough." A swirl of indignation and fear roiled within Lily. She understood that from the outside it might appear suspicious, but it pained her that instead of compassion, her workplace was eyeing her with distrust. After more questioning, did she handle any hospital suppliers connected to Collins Enterprises? Did she sign or promise anything that could compromise the hospital? Lily walked out of the office feeling drained. The only relief was that they didn't officially reprimand her or terminate her internship on the spot. But they did mention that further inquiries might follow. Marie found her in the corridor, looking pale. "That bad?" Marie asked gently. Lily relayed the gist, tears threatening to spill. "I thought they might fire me," she whispered. All because I accepted help for my mother's medical bills and my rent. I can't lose my internship, Marie. It's the only path I have to a stable future." Marie shook her head in sympathy. "Take a deep breath. They didn't fire you. They're just covering themselves. Keep doing your job well, avoid any drama, and this might blow over." Nodding shakily, Lily went to start her shift. She spent the afternoon checking vitals, performing routine tasks, and forcing a smile for patients. Inside, though, the tension remained, like a weight pressing on her chest. She was grateful for Redwood's help, and for Richard, but she hated feeling like her life had turned into a spectacle for rumor-mongers. That evening, exhausted, Lily arrived home to find her mother asleep again. She set aside her bag, checked the fridge for anything she could cook, and tried to ignore the swirl of dread about her internship. Her phone buzzed with a text from Richard. "Hey, Lily, just wanted to check in. Everything okay?" She sank onto the couch, exhaling. After a moment, she replied, "Not really. The hospital administration questioned me about conflicts of interest. People suspect I'm getting special deals. It's humiliating." It only took a minute for her phone to ring. She answered softly, mindful of her mother. "Hello?" Richard's voice was low, filled with concern. "I'm sorry this is happening. I had a feeling someone might try to twist things. Do you want me to speak with the hospital board?" Alarm flashed through Lily. "No. That would only confirm their suspicions, that I have powerful connections manipulating them. I need to handle this myself." A thoughtful pause. "I understand, but if they threaten to fire you, let me know. Collins Enterprises works closely with that hospital on multiple programs. I could at least clarify that you haven't done anything improper." Her mind whirled. On one hand, it was tempting to have him intervene, to set the record straight from a position of influence, but that would likely backfire, fueling rumors that she was indeed using him for personal gain. "Let me try to weather this," Lily said quietly. "I appreciate your concern, but I have to maintain my professional image." Richard's sigh conveyed empathy. "All right, but promise me you'll call if it escalates. You're not alone, Lily." After they said goodnight, Lily gazed at her phone in the dimly lit living room. The day had left her drained, but knowing she had someone to lean on, even if indirectly, offered a small measure of solace. In a polished upscale bar that same night, Daniel Collins sat across from a well-connected journalist named Carmen. He sipped a top-shelf scotch, while Carmen examined a thin file folder he had discreetly slipped her way. She looked up at Daniel with a raised brow. "So you want me to poke around about this nurse? Find out if she's scandal-worthy? Why not just spin the story yourself?" Daniel gave a disarming smile. "I'm not in the tabloid business, Carmen, but you might find it intriguing. A wealthy CEO, an intern with sudden funding, could be a human interest piece, or a scandal, depending on the angle." Carmen tilted her glass, swirling the wine. "But if your brother is actually helping a struggling nurse, that's a heartwarming angle, not scandalous. Unless there's more to it?" Daniel's eyes flickered with calculation. "Dig deeper and see. Maybe she's playing him. Maybe he's crossing professional lines. If you find nothing, then so be it. But I suspect there's a bigger story. People love a narrative about hidden intentions." Carmen studied him for a moment, then shrugged. "Fine. I'll see what's out there. You sure you're comfortable with me investigating your family's business?" He downed his scotch, setting the glass on the table with a light clink. "I'm comfortable with the truth, Carmen, wherever it leads." He pushed to his feet, leaving a crisp bill under the glass. "And if it leads to something newsworthy, let's just say I'll owe you a favor." As he walked out into the night, Daniel felt the thrill of controlling the chessboard. By unleashing a journalist onto Lily's life, he'd either confirm her innocence or uncover something unsavory. In either scenario, Daniel believed he could steer events to protect Collins Enterprises and his own ambitions. Oblivious to Daniel's schemes, Lily tried to sleep, her mind cycling through the day's tension. Each time she closed her eyes, she saw Ms. Dela Cruz's stern face, or heard the HR representative's pointed questions about financial favors. The next Redwood appointment for her mother was in a few days, and the hospital review might not be resolved by then. Could Lily continue to walk this tightrope, accepting Richard's help in private while proclaiming independence in her professional life? A wave of worry broke over her. All she wanted was to heal her mother, pass her exam, and secure a stable future. She'd never asked for this swirl of rumor and corporate meddling. As she drifted into an uneasy slumber, the thought that Daniel or someone else might escalate these rumors never crossed her mind. She was too consumed by the immediate threat of losing her hard-earned internship. Yet forces were indeed escalating around her. Daniel's cunning network of contacts, the hospital's scrutiny, and the swirl of speculation about her ties to the Collins empire were converging. Soon, Lily would stand at the center of a storm that tested not only her resilience but also the fragile bond she'd forged with Richard. And as she clung to her moral compass, she had no clue just how many obstacles lay ahead, or how dearly the truth would cost them both. Morning light spilled into the modest apartment as Lily prepared to accompany her mother to the next appointment at Redwood Medical Clinic. They moved slowly down the stairs, Lily's arms steady around her mother's waist. Though her mother still tired easily, the new treatment protocol at Redwood had managed to keep her breathing under better control. Even so, each step brought that hushed worry that Lily tried so hard to hide. Every improvement, however small, felt like a gift, but she knew obstacles lurked at every turn. By the time their taxi pulled up to Redwood's gleaming glass facade, Lily's mother was already leaning her head back against the seat, eyes half closed. Lily paid the fare with a portion of her internship paycheck, newly freed up since Richard's intervention had covered the rent. The relief of not constantly juggling overdue bills sat uneasily alongside the guilt of depending on his help. Still, she had bigger concerns, like ensuring her mother made it through today's round of tests and consultations. Inside the clinic's reception area, a friendly nurse led them into a private examination room. Dr. Miller arrived shortly afterward, offering a warm smile. "Welcome back," she said, folding her arms across a crisp white coat. "We'll do a quick check on your mother's vitals, then see how the medication adjustments are working. Any changes at home since last time?" Lily's mother coughed lightly, then shook her head. "No major changes, I suppose. Breathing's a bit better, but I get dizzy spells sometimes." Lily stood at the foot of the exam bed, hands knitted together. "And her appetite is still inconsistent. Some days she can eat a full meal. Others, she barely touches her plate." Dr. Miller nodded, making notes on a tablet. "We'll run new blood work and possibly a lung scan. The dizziness might be linked to how her body is absorbing the medication. Don't worry yet. I've seen this pattern before. We'll make sure to adjust if needed." The typical hum of medical machinery and quiet conversation filled the room. A lab technician arrived to draw a blood sample, and Lily helped her mother roll up a sleeve. Even though Lily was only an intern at another facility, she slipped easily into caregiver mode here, soothing her mother with quiet words. In these gentle moments, Lily's anxieties about her own life receded, replaced by a singular focus: seeing her mother healthy again. Once the technician left, Lily's mother sank against the pillow, catching her breath. Dr. Miller gave Lily a quick nod as if to say, "Let her rest," and Lily took the cue, stepping out into the hallway. There she found herself alone, recalling the hospital's scrutiny and the performance review that had rattled her. Would Redwood staff eventually question her too? So far, they hadn't pressed for financial proof beyond what Richard's voucher covered. But if rumors kept spreading, might that cast doubt even on Redwood's willingness to help? She shook off the thought. Right now, the best thing she could do was show unwavering support for her mother. Once these tests concluded, Lily planned to return to the hospital for a shorter afternoon shift. She didn't dare skip more days than necessary, not with her job on the line. but her stomach twisted at the thought of encountering more rumors or sideways glances from co-workers. Eventually, Dr. Miller stepped back into the hallway, beckoning Lily toward her office. "Your mother's stable," she reassured, leading Lily inside. The office was tastefully decorated with soft lighting and framed diplomas. "I want to keep her for a few hours to run those scans and monitor any side effects. In the meantime, we should talk about next steps." A hint of dread flickered in Lily's chest. "All right." Dr. Miller settled behind her desk. "The good news is that her lungs show partial improvement. The medication is holding certain issues at bay, but her autoimmune markers remain high. We may need to consider a specialized infusion therapy." Lily's mind jumped to cost. "And that means an even higher bill, right?" A sympathetic nod. "We can keep some costs in check through Redwood's foundation, but infusion therapy is expensive. We'll have a better sense of the total after a consult with our immunology team. Perhaps your benefactor—" "I don't want to rely on him for everything," Lily blurted before she could stop herself. She caught Dr. Miller's raised brow and swallowed hard. "I'm sorry. I just mean, I don't want to keep leaning on the same source of funding. I'm trying to find other ways to manage." Dr. Miller gave a reassuring smile. "Understood. Let's gather the data first. We do have payment plans, and Redwood can sometimes secure grants. Your mother has a real chance to improve with the right treatment, Lily. Don't lose hope." Lily nodded, absorbing Dr. Miller's words. She tried to thank her, but emotion clogged her throat. Finally, she managed a quiet, "Thank you, doctor," and stepped out. Hope and worry warred inside her, each battling for space in her mind. Back in her mother's room, Lily gently stroked her forehead. "I need to get to work soon. Are you okay if I leave you here for a bit?" Her mother's eyes fluttered open. "Go on. I'll be fine. The nurses are kind, and I'm not going anywhere until they finish their tests." A faint smile curved her lips. "Besides, we can't risk your job. Don't fuss over me too much." Lily forced a playful scoff. No such thing as too much fuss. She helped settle the blankets, then kissed her mother's cheek. "I'll come back after my shift." Her mother sighed, nodding. "I'll be here." Outside, Lily was greeted by bright midday sunshine. She called a taxi, fiddling with her phone as she waited. She'd already spent a chunk of time away from the hospital. She hoped her supervisor wouldn't question it further, especially after the recent scrutiny. As the taxi rolled up, Lily's phone buzzed with a text. Instinctively, she hoped it wasn't Richard or the administrative office calling her in again. But the screen showed a number she didn't recognize. "Hello, Lily, this is Carmen Mejia, a reporter interested in doing a human interest piece about patients receiving advanced care through Redwood's foundation. I've heard your story might inspire many. Would you have a moment to speak?" Lily's heart rate spiked. A reporter? Doing a story? She bit her lip. Redwood's philanthropic wing sometimes showcased success stories, but she hadn't heard anything about a direct interview. Could Dr. Miller have recommended her mother's case as a highlight? Or was this something else? She typed a careful reply. "Sorry, I'm in a rush. Maybe we can talk later." Then she tucked the phone away, not wanting to risk more confusion. The last thing she needed was media attention fueling the rumors swirling around her. She climbed into the taxi, mind whirring. If Redwood's foundation wanted to spotlight her mother's journey, that might be good, right? But caution nagged at her, especially after the hospital's reaction. If a story circulated about how Lily had landed help at Redwood, certain people might twist it into a scandal. She told herself she'd sort it out later. For now, she had a shift to survive. At the hospital, Lily arrived breathless, changing into scrubs in record time. She dove straight into tasks, checking in on pre-op patients, delivering medication charts, assisting the senior nurse on duty. Pushing back her concerns, she forced a smile for everyone she passed, hoping no trace of tension showed. Midway through her shift, she noticed Ms. Dela Cruz stepping onto the ward, clipboard in hand. Lily's pulse skittered. Was this a follow-up to the review? But Ms. Dela Cruz simply passed by, giving Lily the briefest nod, polite but reserved. Lily exhaled, returning to her duties. At least she wasn't being summoned for more interrogation. Shortly before her shift ended, Grace caught Lily in the break room. "Hey," Grace said softly. "You okay? You look worn out." Lily let out a rueful chuckle. "Just balancing Redwood appointments, my mother's health and work stress. Nothing major," she added with a sarcastic tone. "You?" Grace grimaced. "I hate to pile on your stress, but I overheard Ms. Dela Cruz on the phone mentioning some external inquiries about you. Something about a journalist wanting to verify your story. Lily, are you talking to a reporter?" Unease crept down Lily's spine. "I got a text from someone named Carmen. I had no idea Ms. Dela Cruz was aware. Did Redwood refer her to me? Or is this something else?" Grace shook her head. "No clue. But if admin's already involved, watch your back. If the story spins out of control, they might blame you for bringing negative press or overshadowing hospital policy. You know how they can be." Lily swallowed hard. "I don't want to be part of any story. All I want is to do my job and help my mother get better." She rubbed her temples, a headache forming. "This is getting ridiculous." Grace gently squeezed Lily's shoulder. "Hang in there. You're a good person, Lily. People will see that." Hours later, Lily's shift ended, and she rushed back to Redwood to check on her mother. She found her mother in a resting area, an IV drip attached to her arm. Dr. Miller had begun a preliminary infusion to stabilize certain immune markers. Her mother's expression looked a bit groggy but calm. "They said this infusion might be the first of several," her mother murmured, voice slightly slurred from fatigue. "Is that going to be all right, Lily?" Lily cupped her mother's hand, forcing a gentle smile. "We'll figure it out," she promised, though the question of cost loomed large. "One step at a time." Dr. Miller appeared, scanning the IV line. "Her vitals are stable. We'll keep her overnight for observation. The infusion can cause side effects, so it's safer this way." She paused, meeting Lily's gaze. "If it's helpful, we can connect you with a Redwood social worker. She might guide you on grants or financial support so you don't have to rely on your friend for everything." The suggestion pricked Lily's pride, but mostly it relieved her. "That might be good," she admitted. "Thank you." With a nod, Dr. Miller left them alone. Lily took a seat at her mother's bedside, exhaustion weighing on her limbs. She recalled the mysterious text from Carmen, the reporter. If Redwood's social worker had some official channels for patient stories, maybe that was the link. Maybe it was harmless. Not wanting to brood on it further, she pulled out her nursing exam notes, determined to study in the hush of the clinic room. Her mother dozed, the steady beeping of monitors a kind of lullaby. Lily's eyes drifted over the pages, but the words blurred. The events of the day swirled in her mind, the hospital's continued caution, Ms. Dela Cruz's watchful presence, the reporter's text, and the looming financial burden for more infusions. She closed her eyes, massaging the back of her neck. How had her life become so complicated so quickly? An hour later, Lily stepped out to get some water. As she passed through the hallway, her phone buzzed again. Another message from Carmen. "Lily, sorry to bother you. I really believe your story can inspire others. I'm talking about a nurse who cares for her mom while benefiting from Redwood's philanthropic program. People eat that up. Maybe we can talk tomorrow?" A flicker of dread mingled with curiosity. If the story framed Lily as a dedicated daughter and Redwood as a benevolent institution, perhaps it could help secure more community support. But she sensed a risk. She typed a cautious reply. "I'm not sure yet. Let me think about it." She imagined how the hospital administration might interpret an interview. They'd see it as Lily flaunting her connections. Or worse, if the reporter dug deeper, She might discover Richard's role and swirl those rumors into a frenzy. Lily sighed, wishing she could bury her head in the sand until this storm passed. That night, once her mother was settled for an overnight stay, Lily left the clinic in a daze. Stepping onto the sidewalk, she took a moment to breathe the cool evening air. Streetlights cast warm circles on the pavement, and a slight breeze rustled her hair. She considered calling Richard, explaining the day's events, or even seeking his advice about the journalist. But every time she leaned in that direction, she felt the constraints of her professional concerns. Already the hospital was suspicious. Reaching out to Richard at every turn might only fuel that. Yet the swirling tensions were too big to handle alone. As she caught a bus home, Lily decided she'd text him a simple update. "Redwood admitted mom overnight for infusion. I'll fill you in later." She tapped send and watched the city lights blur past the window. A few minutes later, Richard responded with immediate concern. "Keep me posted. If you need anything at all, let me know." She smiled faintly at his warmth, but then stuffed the phone back into her pocket. She'd figure out how to juggle these crises. She had no other choice. Daniel, however, was already maneuvering in the background. That same evening, he placed a quick phone call to the reporter Carmen, verifying that she'd made contact with Lily. He stressed how compelling the story could become if only Carmen found the right angle, perhaps Lily's hospital friction or any sign that Lily was receiving undue special favors. Carmen, recognizing the potential for a scoop, hinted that she would approach Lily more aggressively soon, maybe even show up at Redwood or the hospital. Thus, as Lily rode the bus in weary silence, determined to shield her mother and cling to her job, she had no inkling that the next day might bring a confrontation that could thrust her deeper into public scrutiny. The stage was set. Redwood's philanthropic spotlight, Daniel's manipulations, the hospital's watchful eye, and Lily's precarious position in the center of it all. If she stumbled, she could lose not just her internship, but also the crucial medical support her mother so desperately needed. And if Richard intervened, the spotlight would only grow more intense, perhaps endangering them both. That night, when Lily finally reached her apartment, she dropped onto the couch, textbooks forgotten in her bag. The worn ceiling overhead offered no answers. She closed her eyes, letting the day's fatigue overtake her. Tomorrow, she reminded herself, would be another test of resilience. She only hoped her determination and her bond with Richard, however tentative, would be enough to see her through the challenges looming on the horizon. The next day dawned with an eerie sense of calm. Lily woke early, her body trained to need less sleep despite her exhaustion, and brewed a small pot of coffee in the cramped kitchen. It was strange being in the apartment alone. Her mother was still at Redwood Clinic under observation, so the usually quiet space felt downright hollow. But that emptiness gave Lily precious minutes to gather her thoughts before another unpredictable day began. She sipped the bitter coffee, glancing around at the worn furniture and the small patch of sunlight spreading across the floor. Part of her longed to rush back to Redwood and stay by her mother's side, but she had a shorter hospital shift to work, followed by an exam study group in the late afternoon. She couldn't afford to slip up on her professional obligations. Her phone buzzed, snapping her out of her reverie. She half expected it to be someone from Redwood or the hospital administration, but instead, the screen displayed an unknown number. A sense of foreboding twitched in her gut as she answered with a tentative, "Hello?" "Good morning, Lily," came a bright voice. "It's Carmen. We texted yesterday. I'm the journalist hoping to spotlight Redwood's charitable programs." Lily's fingers tightened around the phone. She stepped closer to the window, making sure no neighbors overheard. "Yes, I remember. I'd love to sit down with you, maybe even see you at Redwood if that's more convenient. I promise it's purely about highlighting your mother's journey and the wonderful help Redwood is providing." Lily pressed her palm to her forehead, trying to steady her breath. A part of her recognized that Carmen's intentions might be harmless. Redwood did highlight success stories, and Lily's mother's improvement could inspire others. But Lily couldn't shake her wariness. I'm Not sure, she managed. The hospital where I intern is already concerned about me receiving outside assistance. An interview might make things worse. Carmen's tone softened, though Lily sensed a certain practiced sympathy. I understand your caution, but Redwood is proud of helping patients like your mother. The foundation actually welcomes these narratives. It encourages more donations, and for you, it could reflect well if people see you as a devoted daughter juggling a nursing career. Lily let out a small sigh. Torn. If Redwood wanted this story, maybe Dr. Miller or someone from the social work department would mention it. Yet no one from Redwood had officially asked for an interview, and Lily's experiences with official channels at her own hospital had been anything but smooth. I appreciate your interest, she said carefully, but I can't decide right now. I have a shift soon and my mother's still undergoing treatment. Let me think about it. Sure, Carmen replied, but I'll be in the city for a few more days. If Redwood is discharging your mom soon, maybe I can catch you both. Even if it's just for a quick chat or a photo, let me know. I'll check in tomorrow. Before Lily could respond, Carmen ended the call. Lily lowered the phone, uneasy. She wondered if Redwood had truly approved Carmen's approach or if Carmen was fishing for a more sensational angle. Glancing at the clock, Lily realized she had limited time before her shift. With a frustrated sigh, she gathered her bag, locked the door, and headed out to the bus stop. Another day balancing her mother's care, hospital gossip, a potential journalist's intrusion, and her own professional obligations had begun. When Lily reached the hospital, she discovered the atmosphere more charged than usual. Nurses and interns bustled about, some wearing tense expressions. She noticed Grace frowning at a bulletin board cluttered with new memos. "Grace, what's going on?" Lily asked, setting her tote down. Grace gave a tired shrug. "Apparently, a rumor circulated that we might be under a staffing audit next week. Administration wants to ensure no inappropriate relationships or conflicts exist. This place is so on edge." Lily's throat went dry. A formal audit? She recalled the uneasy conversation with Ms. Dela Cruz. If an audit team sniffed around, they could latch onto Lily's situation, pouncing on the slightest hint of wrongdoing. "Do you think it's connected to me?" she whispered anxiously. Grace shook her head, though her eyes flicked with concern. "Hard to say. The hospital's finances and staffing are always under scrutiny, especially with the expansions and budget cuts. But you know your name will come up. Someone's definitely pushing this narrative about you. I just don't know who." Lily felt a prickle of dread as she pulled on her scrubs. "I'll keep a low profile," she murmured. "Focus on my tasks. Keep my head down." Grace smiled sympathetically. "If anyone can handle it with grace, pun intended, it's you. Don't let them intimidate you." That morning's tasks involved assisting with a round of post-operative checks, changing dressings, and taking vitals. Lily moved through each job methodically, pushing personal worries aside. She forced a friendly smile for patients and co-workers, hoping her professionalism might overshadow any rumors. Her mind occasionally drifted to her mother, likely getting an infusion or resting in Redwood's specialized care. Yet Lily refused to check her phone, fearing every beep or buzz might carry more complications. Around midday, she finally paused for a quick break in the staff lounge. She sipped water, scanning her phone messages. Dr. Miller had sent a reassuring update. Lily's mother was responding well to the infusion and might be discharged by late evening. A wave of relief swept Lily. At least that was going smoothly. But lurking in her inbox was another text from Carmen, making Lily's pulse spike. "Heard Redwood might discharge your mom tonight. Perfect for a small interview, maybe at the clinic exit. Let's finalize a time?" Lily shut her eyes, frustration welling. She typed back, "Not sure. This is personal. I'll let you know if we're interested." Then she powered the phone off, deciding not to engage further. When she returned to the corridor, she spotted Ms. Dela Cruz again, near the nurses' station, in hushed conversation with a man in a tailored suit. The man had an authoritative air, scanning the ward with a critical eye. Lily's stomach twisted. Could this be someone from administration or even the rumored audit team? As Lily passed by, Ms. Dela Cruz glanced at her. The man followed her gaze, his eyes raking over Lily's uniform and badge. Lily hurried on, not wishing to overhear or be called over. But a chill danced down her spine. There was an intensity in that man's expression that suggested trouble. She couldn't shake the feeling that the walls were closing in. Meanwhile, in the upper floors of a different tower across the city, Daniel Collins sat at his desk, tapping a neat stack of documents. Carmen had updated him about her progress, that Lily was evasive, but that Redwood might soon discharge the mother, offering a prime opportunity for an ambush interview. Daniel had listened with mild amusement. If Lily gave any slip of the tongue, mentioned that Richard directly funded her rent, Carmen could spin it into a bigger story. So far, though, nothing salacious had emerged. That meant Daniel needed to stir the pot more. He dialed a private line to a contact in the hospital board, a person who owed Daniel a favor. After brief pleasantries, Daniel brought up Lily's name, casting hints about questionable financial ties and media interest. He feigned concern for the hospital's reputation, noting that someone from Redwood was involved. By the end of the call, Daniel had sown enough seeds to ensure that the hospital's rumored audit would indeed spotlight Lily's activities. Ending the call, Daniel smirked. He would maintain a posture of innocence if Richard or anyone questioned him. Meanwhile, the institution itself would do the dirty work of pressuring Lily. Eventually, Richard would see the scandal brewing and be forced to break ties or suffer brand damage. Daniel's plan felt elegantly simple. If Lily was truly innocent, she'd likely crack under stress. If she tried to maintain the illusions, the hospital or Redwood staff would expose her. Either outcome served Daniel's purpose. By late afternoon, Lily wrapped up her shift, slipping off her scrubs with trembling fingers. She grabbed her phone to check in with Redwood, half expecting to see new chaos. Instead, there was a text from Dr. Miller confirming her mother was stable enough to be released that evening. Relief flooded her, at least on that front. Lily had arranged for a taxi. There was no way she'd let her mother navigate public transport after an intense infusion. She just hoped Redwood's billing office wouldn't corner her for an updated invoice. In the best scenario, they'd wait until all follow-up treatments concluded to present a final statement. Arriving at Redwood near dusk, Lily hurried inside. The reflection of city lights glimmered off the clinic's pristine lobby floors. She signed in at reception and found her mother dressed, albeit slowly, in her own clothes, looking paler but relieved. Dr. Miller said the scans show partial improvement, her mother said with a weak grin. They want me back for another infusion in 2 weeks, but at least I can sleep in my own bed tonight. Lily helped her mother stand, hugging her gently. That's good news. We'll handle the rest as it comes. They made their way toward the exit. A Redwood nurse walked beside them, offering discharge instructions in a gentle tone. Watch for signs of dizziness, keep up with the medication, schedule labs before the next infusion. Lily's mother held onto Lily's arm, clearly fatigued. The overhead lights felt harsh, and Lily found herself longing for the quiet sanctity of home. But as they approached the automatic doors that led to the street, Lily spotted a figure waiting outside, a woman with a press badge pinned to her blazer, a small camera bag slung over her shoulder. Even before the woman noticed them, Lily recognized her from the social media photo attached to earlier texts, Carmen. She was waiting, presumably hoping to catch Lily and her mother for a spontaneous interview. Lily's breath caught. She could turn around, pretend she hadn't seen Carmen and find another exit. But Redwood's layout was fairly straightforward. Exiting through a side door would require going back upstairs, and her mother was already unsteady on her feet. Before Lily could decide, Carmen spotted them through the glass. She gave a polite wave and stepped forward, a professional smile spreading across her face. "Lily," she called softly. "I'm so glad I caught you." Anxiety thrummed in Lily's chest. She forced a neutral expression, tightening her grip on her mother's elbow. "I wasn't expecting you here," she said carefully, holding the door open. The evening air brushed in with a slight chill. Carmen's gaze flickered to Lily's mother, then back to Lily. "I'm sorry if this feels abrupt. I really do believe your story, how Redwood's philanthropic approach is helping your mother, is something people should hear. May I ask just a few questions? I promise to keep it respectful." Lily's mother frowned, leaning into Lily's side. "Sweetheart, is this about those rumors?" she asked in a tired whisper. Lily swallowed, wishing to spare her mother any more stress. "I don't think we can do this right now," Lily told Carmen, stepping forward a bit, hoping to shield her mother from the camera. Carmen stood her ground. "I understand your hesitation, but Redwood might also appreciate a success story to share with donors. If you give me a few minutes, we can keep it positive, talk about the life-changing care you're receiving, your mother's improvements, and the promise it holds for other families." A swirl of thoughts assaulted Lily. She recalled Dr. Miller suggesting Redwood had some grants. Maybe a supportive article would help? Could it open doors to more financial assistance? Then again, if the hospital caught wind of Lily giving an interview, especially one referencing outside benefactors, it could amplify the suspicion that she was exploiting her connections. Her mother pulled gently at Lily's sleeve. "Lily, I'm exhausted," she murmured, lips pale. "I don't want to fuss." Lily nodded, giving Carmen an apologetic look. "I'm sorry, but my mother needs to rest. We're not up for interviews tonight." Carmen's face fell slightly. "I completely understand. Could we schedule another time? I'll only ask a few background questions now off the record." "No." Lily's voice was soft but firm. "Not right now. Thank you for your interest, but we need to go." Carmen pursed her lips, scanning Lily's weary expression. "All right, I won't press, but I'll text you, okay? And if Redwood itself chooses to do a piece, I hope you'll reconsider. This could help more patients see what's possible." She took a step back, though Lily felt her watchful eyes trailing them as they headed to the curb, where a small line of taxis awaited. Outside, Lily ushered her mother into a taxi, heart pounding from the tension. Once the door shut, Lily exhaled a shaky breath, glancing through the window to see Carmen still lingering on the sidewalk, phone in hand. Probably messaging someone, Lily thought bitterly. Maybe Redwood staff, or worse, Daniel Collins. She had no idea who else Carmen might be in contact with. Her mother slumped against the seat, eyes closed. Lily gently brushed a strand of hair from her mother's forehead. "It's okay," she murmured. "Let's just get home." The ride was quiet except for the city noise bleeding through the windows. Lily stared out at the passing lights, her nerves frayed. She thought of calling Richard to warn him about the potential interview fiasco, but decided to wait. He was probably swamped with his own corporate responsibilities, and Lily wasn't even sure how he'd react. He might try to intervene, which could complicate things further. Soon they reached the apartment. Lily carefully guided her mother upstairs, ensuring she was settled on the couch, pillows plumped for maximum comfort. A wave of gratitude swept through her that at least they still had a home to return to. The eviction threat was behind them for the time being. "Thank you," her mother whispered, half dozing already, the infusion's aftermath sapping her energy. "And sorry for the trouble with that reporter." Lily smoothed her mother's blanket. "Not your fault, Mom. None of this is." A soft hum from her phone signaled an incoming message. She checked it, expecting either Redwood's automated follow-up or perhaps Carmen. Instead, it was a text from Grace. "Lily, rumor is Ms. Dela Cruz might ask you for a written statement about your finances. Be careful what you say. She's determined." Lily's hand clenched around the device. A statement about her finances? Was the hospital truly demanding that level of scrutiny? She pictured Daniel somewhere behind the scenes, orchestrating her downfall. It was a paranoid thought. She had no direct proof. Yet something about the relentless gossip, the hospital's sudden deep interest, and now a pushy reporter ambushing her at Redwood smelled like a coordinated effort. She sank onto the floor beside the couch, leaning her head back against it, exhaustion rolling over her in waves. The next infusion, the looming hospital audit, the journalist sniffing around, she felt cornered on all sides. Her mother stirred, glancing down at her. "Lily, you okay?" "Just tired," Lily managed, trying to summon a small smile. "Tomorrow, I have a study group for my exams. Remember I told you? I can't fall behind, but don't worry, I'll figure out everything." Her mother's eyes reflected both pride and sorrow. "I know you will, but let me help if I can." The lumps in Lily's throat prevented her from responding. After a moment, she simply laid a hand on her mother's arm. "We'll get through it," she whispered, barely believing her own reassurance. Across town, Carmen typed up her notes from the near interview with Lily. She shot a quick text to Daniel, summarizing that Lily had refused to speak but looked stressed. Daniel, reading the update in his stylish penthouse, allowed himself a self-satisfied grin. The more pressure on Lily, the more likely she'd slip up or let him manipulate the narrative. And if the hospital decided to force Lily's hand, so much the better. Eventually, Richard would see how complicated and potentially damaging the situation was and concede to Daniel's stance to end it. Meanwhile, Richard himself had no clue about Carmen's near ambush that evening. He was trapped in a corporate dinner, entertaining investors for the Redwood expansions. He'd glance at his phone every so often, half hoping to hear from Lily, but no messages came. He chalked it up to her being busy with her mother's discharge. Still, an uneasy feeling niggled in the back of his mind, the sense that forces were shifting beneath the surface. For Lily, after so many storms, one question dominated her thoughts as she tried to get some rest on a makeshift mattress near her mother's couch. How much longer could she keep juggling everything before something gave way? And if it did, would she lose her job, her mother's treatment, and perhaps the tentative connection she'd formed with Richard? One slip, one misstep in an interview, or one rumor twisted the wrong way, and her life could collapse like a house of cards. In the silence of night, Lily closed her eyes, forcing herself to believe that the next day might bring clarity instead of deeper chaos. But in the shadows, Daniel's strategy tightened around her. Redwood's staff remained watchful of expenses, and the hospital's audit promised scrutiny she wasn't prepared for. Unbeknownst to Lily, the final crisis loomed ever closer, waiting to test the lengths she would go and the sacrifices she would make to protect her mother and salvage her future. Lily woke before dawn, her body tense as though sensing the storm about to break. She had slept lightly on the makeshift mattress beside her mother, who was still dozing, worn out from the recent infusion. A deep ache of anxiety had settled in Lily's chest, and not even the morning sun peeking through the thin curtains could warm her nerves. She hurried through her usual morning routine, a quick cup of coffee, a glance at her phone for any messages from Redwood or the hospital. Her mother stirred around 6:30 a.m., blinking awake with a small groan. Lily helped her sit up, offering water. "Morning," her mother said, voice raspy but lucid. "You heading to the hospital again?" Lily nodded, forcing a faint smile. "I've got a shorter shift, but afterward I have a study group for my exam. I'll be back by evening." Her mother gave a rueful sigh. "You're running yourself ragged, sweetie. Don't forget to breathe." Breathing felt like a luxury Lily couldn't afford. The hospital's rumored audit, the journalist prowling around Redwood, the uncertain cost of future treatments, they all crowded her mind. Yet she simply smiled, pressing a gentle kiss to her mother's forehead. "I'll be okay. If you feel bad today, call me, or call Redwood. Promise?" Her mother nodded, leaning back against the cushions. "Promise." The bus ride to the hospital was subdued, the typical rush-hour chatter blending into a dull roar. Lily gazed out the window, her reflection superimposed over passing buildings. She wondered if she should reach out to Richard, tell him about Carmen's attempt to interview them, or the possible hospital audit. But a gnawing sense of pride and caution held her back. He was already doing too much. Involving him further might only fan the flames, especially if Daniel or the hospital board got wind of it. Upon arriving, she headed straight for the locker room. A fresh notice on the staff board caught her eye. Mandatory meeting, administrative wing, 2 p.m. All available staff and interns must attend. The thick block letters made Lily's stomach flip. Another meeting. More scrutiny. She grabbed her scrubs, nerves twisting. Grace joined her at the lockers, scanning Lily's face with concern. "You saw the notice? Any idea what it's about?" Lily shook her head. "No details, just that we all have to go. Do you think it's the official audit we've been dreading?" Grace pursed her lips, glancing around to ensure no one overheard. "I heard a rumor from one of the administrative clerks. Something about verifying staff credentials, any conflicts of interest, and new budget constraints. It's probably everything rolled into one." She touched Lily's arm gently. "Stay strong." Steeling herself, Lily changed into her scrubs and dove into her shift, tending to patients with her usual diligence. She kept an eye on the clock, dread mounting as 2 p.m. inched closer. Every beep of a monitor seemed louder. Every hushed conversation in the halls felt charged. She tried to be grateful that none of the supervisors approached her directly that morning. It gave her time to mentally prepare. By early afternoon, the hospital corridors thrummed with a collective tension. Nurses and interns whispered to one another, speculating about the content of the upcoming mandatory meeting. Some worried about layoffs, others about departmental reassignments. A few alluded to rumors of staff misconduct investigations. Lily's heart hammered as she and Grace joined the stream of employees heading for the large conference room near the administrative wing. Inside, rows of folding chairs faced a long table where Ms. Dela Cruz, the HR representative, and 2 unfamiliar suits sat, wearing solemn expressions. Lily recognized one of the men in the suits as the same figure she'd glimpsed the day before, a tall, stern-faced individual with an air of authority. Once everyone settled, Ms. Dela Cruz stepped forward. She cleared her throat, scanning the crowd. "Good afternoon," she began. "Thank you for attending on short notice. The hospital is undergoing a series of internal reviews to ensure compliance with both ethical and financial standards. We want to address certain concerns openly and outline the procedures that will follow." Murmurs rippled through the room. Lily sat in the middle row, shoulders tense. She saw the HR representative nodding gravely behind Ms. Dela Cruz. The tall man to her left tapped a pen, his gaze sweeping the assembled staff. "These concerns," Ms. Dela Cruz continued, "range from verifying the authenticity of staff certifications to investigating allegations of potential conflicts of interest. We have engaged an external audit firm and want full cooperation from all personnel." An anxious hush fell. Grace leaned over to Lily, whispering, "External? That's more serious than I thought." Ms. Dela Cruz pressed on. "If any staff member has accepted or offered any form of personal or financial benefit that could compromise patient care or the hospital's integrity, we urge you to come forward. Otherwise, if the auditors discover improprieties, disciplinary measures will be taken." Lily's blood pounded in her ears. The language felt like a direct shot at her situation, though she knew it probably encompassed broader hospital issues too. Her cheeks heated, half expecting Ms. Dela Cruz to single her out in front of everyone. As if reading her mind, Ms. Dela Cruz then said, "Some staff have already been interviewed about rumors involving external benefactors. If you are approached for a follow-up, please provide full transparency. The hospital's reputation is at stake." A wave of dread thickened in Lily's throat. She glanced around, seeing a few people cast sidelong glances her way. Others looked at the floor. The tall man in the suit, likely one of the external auditors, made a brief note on his clipboard, eyes flicking toward Lily's row for an instant before moving on. After a short Q&A session about the audit's timeline, the meeting concluded. Staff disbanded in subdued clusters, conversation low and anxious. Grace squeezed Lily's hand once they stood. "They're tightening the net," she murmured. "I hate this for you, Lily." Lily forced a thin smile. "I'll answer their questions truthfully. I haven't done anything unethical." But fear gnawed at her. Would the hospital see the rent payment or Redwood assistance as crossing a line? She dreaded the possibility they might label her as exploiting connections. Richard, meanwhile, was oblivious to the meltdown at Lily's hospital. He was stuck in a dizzying schedule of corporate meetings, finalizing Redwood expansions and preparing for a major press briefing. Around lunchtime, he found a sliver of time to check his messages, wondering if Lily had reached out. Nothing. Concern grew in him. Had something happened? He typed a quick text. "Hey Lily, how are you? Haven't heard from you. Hope everything's okay with your mom. Let me know if I can help." Then he set the phone aside, returning to a conversation with his CFO about philanthropic allocations. But his mind kept drifting to Lily's predicament. He knew she was proud, reluctant to involve him. Still, he couldn't shake the sense that someone, or something, was making her life more difficult than it needed to be. After the tense meeting, Lily spent the next hour finishing leftover tasks. She was relieved that Ms. Dela Cruz and the auditors didn't corner her immediately, but the atmosphere felt suffocating. At the end of her shift, she changed clothes and headed out, determined to reach her study group on time. She left the hospital by a side exit, avoiding the main lobby, craving a shred of anonymity. As she rounded the corner of the building, her phone buzzed with Richard's text. Reading his words, Lily's eyes stung with emotion. She typed back a brief reply, struggling to keep it positive. "I'm okay. Mom was discharged last night, stable for now. We had a big meeting about an audit at the hospital. Stressful, but I'll manage. Thanks for checking." No sooner had she pressed send than a figure stepped out from behind a nearby pillar. It was Carmen, camera bag slung over her shoulder again. Lily froze, startled. "Carmen?" she said, voice laced with disbelief. "What are you doing here?" Carmen held up her hands in a placating gesture. "I'm not stalking you, I promise. I had leads on a separate story at this hospital. I saw you leaving and thought I'd say hi. Any chance you reconsidered an interview?" Lily's heart hammered. She glanced around, worried someone might see them. "Look, I told you, my situation is delicate. The hospital's already investigating. If I do an interview, it could cause more harm than good." Carmen nodded, though her expression held a hint of professional persistence. "I get it, but Redwood's management is open to discussing positive patient outcomes. If we frame this as your mother's success story, it might overshadow the negative rumors. Could it help you with your hospital superiors? Show them you're just a devoted daughter?" Lily hesitated. Carmen's reasoning tapped into a faint hope. Maybe presenting a clean, uplifting story could counter the suspicion. But her gut still screamed caution. "I can't say yes. Not yet." Carmen sighed, glancing at her watch. "All right, but time is short. I'm meeting Redwood's PR liaison in 2 days, and if you're not on board, they might pick another patient to feature. I'd hate for you and your mother to miss out on some supportive spotlight." Before Lily could respond, Carmen pressed a business card into her hand. "If you change your mind, call me. This could be your chance to set the record straight." Without waiting for an answer, Carmen slipped away, leaving Lily feeling cornered yet again. The card's glossy finish glinted in the afternoon sun, mocking Lily's uncertainty. She shoved it into her bag and hurried off to the bus stop, pulse pounding. Every choice felt like a trap. Speak publicly and risk fueling the rumor mill, or stay silent and watch the negativity fester. Daniel, in his plush office, watched the minutes tick by until his scheduled phone call with Carmen. He expected an update. Maybe Lily had cracked, or maybe she'd refused. Either scenario served Daniel's designs. Indeed, the phone chimed right on time. "Any luck?" Daniel asked smoothly after Carmen greeted him. "She's resistant," Carmen admitted. "I found her at the hospital. She's spooked by some internal audit. She's also worried about negative perceptions. But I think she's wavering. My guess is she might concede if Redwood's PR team encourages it. Daniel leaned back in his leather chair, smiling coolly. Let Redwood's PR push. If Lily cooperates, we get a story that highlights the philanthropic side, and we can spin that angle to show how reliant she is on my brother's help. If she refuses, well, we have other ways of painting her as ungrateful or hiding something. He paused. Either way, keep me posted. Carmen gave a brief assent before hanging up. Daniel tapped his fingers against the mahogany desk, feeling that heady rush of control. Step by step, he was corralling Lily into a no-win situation. If she courted the media, it confirmed she was leveraging the Redwood connection. If she avoided it, she remained under the hospital's shadow of suspicion. Eventually, Richard might see that Lily's presence was a liability rather than an asset. That evening, Lily dragged herself to her study group, forcing her mind to focus on clinical procedures and patient safety guidelines. The other interns at the table noticed her distraction, but only Grace knew the full extent of Lily's troubles. They quizzed each other on advanced nursing scenarios, tried to memorize infection control steps, and tested dosage calculations until Lily's head throbbed. She couldn't shake the sense that no matter how well she did academically, the external pressures might still tear away her future. After the session, Lily emerged from the hospital library to find a text from Richard. I'm relieved about your mom's discharge. Sorry about the audit stress. If you need any letter of support from me or Redwood to prove you did nothing wrong, I'm here. Lily stared at the glowing screen, tears threatening. He was always so ready to help, yet that very help might appear suspicious to those auditing her. She typed a response. Thank you, but any official letters might escalate the rumors. I'll handle it. Let's talk soon. She rode the bus home in a silent haze, stepping into her apartment to find her mother already asleep. As Lily changed into pajamas, her phone pinged once more, this time from the Redwood social worker Dr. Miller had mentioned. The message offered to schedule a meeting about potential grants, urging Lily not to let cost concerns derail her mother's therapy. Lily nearly broke down. So many sources of aid, Richard, Redwood's social worker, the journalist Carmen, yet each came with potential repercussions. She set her phone aside, pressing a hand over her mouth to stifle a sob. She had never felt so trapped, even though people were theoretically trying to help. Late into the night, Lily lay awake on her makeshift mattress, watching her mother's slow, even breathing. The next infusion was 2 weeks away, but Lily's next confrontation with hospital auditors or a persistent journalist might be any day. She dreaded tomorrow, the day after, and the day after that, each one laced with a ticking tension. At some point, she would have to make a bold choice, speak up publicly to clear her name or retreat and hope the rumors died on their own. Both paths seemed fraught with peril, and lurking in the background, though Lily only suspected it, Daniel plotted, Redwood's PR machine churned, and the hospital's external auditors sharpened their scrutiny. If Lily faltered, she might lose everything, her internship, her credibility, and possibly even the advanced care for her mother. The stakes had never been higher. By the time she finally drifted off to a fitful sleep, Lily realized she was bracing for a final showdown that felt inevitable, a reckoning that might define her entire future. The following days felt like a slow march toward an unseen cliff. Lily moved through her hospital shifts in a fog of tension, speaking only when necessary and determined to maintain impeccable conduct. She answered calls for patient assistance, updated charts meticulously, and avoided the staff lounge where rumors circulated. From the outside, she looked professional and composed, but inside, fear coiled tighter each hour. Grace confided that the external auditors were indeed poking around, asking questions about various staff members' financial dealings and personal connections. More than once, Lily noticed that tall, stern-faced auditor observing her from down the corridor. Each time she hurried away, heart pounding. She suspected they were gathering evidence before confronting her directly. Outside the hospital, Carmen's messages kept arriving, persistent but polite. The Redwood social worker also continued to offer help with grants. Lily began to feel she was dancing on a razor's edge. If she didn't secure additional funding, her mother's future infusions might be impossible. If she relied too openly on philanthropy, especially from Richard, she risked the hospital's wrath. She flailed in a sea of conflicting choices, each one seeming to invite disaster. At home, Lily's mother recovered slowly from the infusion's after effects. Some days were better, with enough energy to have a conversation or watch a TV program together. Other days brought back the same lethargy and cough. Lily tried to be cheerful, cooking light meals and helping her mother practice basic breathing exercises recommended by Redwood. Still, Lily couldn't hide her strain forever. "Sweetie," her mother said one morning, gently touching Lily's hand, "I can see how worn down you are. Are you certain you can't let that kind young man— Richard, right? Let him help you more?" Lily bit her lip, her eyes prickling with tears. "He's already done so much," she whispered. "He paid our overdue rent, he pushed Redwood to see you quickly. I'm afraid if we take more, it'll explode into a scandal. The hospital is suspicious enough." Her mother sighed, nodding in reluctant acceptance. "I just hate seeing you struggle." Struggle was an understatement. Lily felt like she was drowning each time she arrived at the hospital, half expecting to be called into Ms. Dela Cruz's office for final judgment. She also couldn't ignore Carmen's repeated offers to do a heartwarming feature on her family's journey. Maybe it really could reshape the narrative, paint her not as a manipulator, but as a devoted daughter. But Lily's gut churned at the thought of going public, dragging her private life and Richard's generosity into the open. The nurse's oath she so cherished emphasized patient dignity, respect, and avoiding conflicts of interest. Inviting publicity on her own situation felt like a violation, but maybe that was exactly what the hospital administration needed to see to end the rumors. One drizzly afternoon, as Lily was clocking out after an exhaustive shift, Ms. Dela Cruz herself appeared at the nurse's station. She met Lily's gaze steadily and spoke in a measured tone. "Miss Reyes, the auditors would like a word with you in conference room B." Lily's stomach lurched. So it was happening at last. She took a shaky breath and nodded, following Ms. Dela Cruz down a quiet corridor where fluorescent lights buzzed faintly overhead. They entered the small, windowless conference room. The tall auditor sat behind a table flanked by the HR representative, and a stack of documents rested in front of them. A single chair waited across from them. "Please, have a seat," the auditor said. Lily lowered herself onto the chair, hands clasped tight in her lap. She forced herself to meet their eyes, determined not to appear cowed. The auditor cleared his throat, flipping through papers. "Miss Reyes," he began, "we appreciate your cooperation. We have questions regarding external financial contributions you may have received, specifically for your personal rent and your mother's medical treatments at Redwood Clinic." Her cheeks warmed, but she kept her voice steady. "I never asked for money in exchange for anything unethical, if that's what you mean." The HR representative spoke up next. "We need to confirm that no aspect of the hospital's resources or influence has been misused. We also want to ensure that no vendor, donor, or corporate partner is funneling funds to you inappropriately. Please explain, in your own words, how you came to receive such assistance." Lily inhaled, slowly recounting the story. How she'd met Richard on the bus, how she paid his fare, how he turned out to be someone with means who offered help after learning about her mother's illness. She tried to keep the details minimal, omitting any direct mention of the rent issue. But the auditor's questions soon forced her to clarify that a corporate entity had indeed covered her rent. "Which corporate entity?" pressed the auditor, pen poised. Lily squirmed. I believe it was associated with Collins Enterprises. I'm not fully sure of the details because I never saw the transaction directly. My landlord just informed me it was handled." The man's pen scratched against paper. The HR representative arched an eyebrow. and you're aware that Collins Enterprises is a significant philanthropic partner to Redwood Clinic, with multiple contracts also linked to this hospital's expansions, correct? Lily hadn't realized the hospital's expansions tied back to Richard's conglomerate. A chill seeped into her bones. I had no idea. I didn't do this to influence or benefit from the hospital. It was about my mother's treatment at Redwood, which is separate from my work here. Her voice rose in pitch, desperation creeping in. I've kept my professional duties intact. I've never asked for any favors from staff or used hospital resources for personal gain. The auditor's gaze bore into her. But can you see how it appears? A nurse intern, financially stressed, suddenly receiving aid from an organization that also does business with this hospital? Even if your intentions are honorable, it raises red flags. But Lily's voice cracked. She wanted to cry, shout, flee. It was never about leveraging the hospital or Redwood. My mother was dying and someone offered help, that's all. The HR representative pursed his lips. We understand your predicament, Miss Reyes. However, the hospital must uphold strict ethics. We'll review your testimony alongside other findings. Meanwhile, you'll remain under probationary status until the audit concludes. Tears stung Lily's eyes. Probationary status? She knew what that meant. Her internship was effectively on hold, with limited responsibilities or pay, pending a final decision. How long? That depends on the auditor's timeline, Ms. Dela Cruz responded, her voice not unkind but firm. We'll notify you. Lily swallowed the sob in her throat, nodding numbly. The meeting ended with clipped farewells, and she stumbled out of the conference room into the hall. She spotted Grace lingering by the corner, concern etched on her face. One look at Lily's tearful expression and Grace opened her arms, pulling Lily into a consoling hug. What happened? Grace whispered. Lily explained in a halting whisper, her voice trembling. They placed me on probation. They suspect I'm part of some conflict of interest. I might lose my job, Grace. Grace's eyes flashed with anger. This is outrageous. Everyone knows you're the most genuine, hard-working intern here. It doesn't matter, Lily choked out. They only see the money from Collins Enterprises. They think I'm compromised. That evening, Lily trudged home in the rain, her mind spinning with worst-case scenarios. If the hospital fired her, she'd lose her internship credits and might not qualify for the upcoming certification exam. Worse, her reputation could be tainted, preventing her from finding another nursing role. She arrived at her apartment drenched, clothes dripping water onto the floor. Her mother, alarmed by Lily's shattered expression, asked, "Lily, what's wrong?" Lily dropped her bag, fighting tears. "They've put me on probation at the hospital. I'm not sure if I'll keep my internship." Her mother's face paled. "Because of the help you accepted for me?" A brittle nod was all Lily managed. Unable to bear seeing her mother's guilt, Lily hurried into the bathroom, locking the door behind her. She stood by the sink, letting silent sobs rack her chest. She felt trapped. She couldn't blame Richard for wanting to help, and she couldn't bear telling her mother that she should have refused Redwood's voucher. There seemed no way out that didn't hurt someone. After a few minutes, she emerged, wiping her eyes. Her mother reached out from the couch. "I'm so sorry, baby. This is my fault." Lily shook her head, sitting beside her. "It's not your fault. I would do it again in a heartbeat. We just have to figure out what to do now." A heavy silence blanketed the room. Then Lily's phone pinged. A text from Carmen. "Heard about your hospital issue from a source. This is exactly why you should go public with your side. Let the public see the real story. A nurse caring for a sick mother. It might pressure the hospital to back off." Lily stared at the text, heart hammering. Carmen was right that a public appeal might sway sentiment, but it also risked turning her life into a spectacle. Another text arrived seconds later, this time from Richard. "Lily, call me. I heard from Redwood that the hospital is taking action against you. Please let me help." She closed her eyes, overwhelmed by the two messages that represented her last possible lifelines. She could try to handle it quietly, look for a lawyer, attempt an internal appeal, but that might fail if the hospital was already set on making an example of her. A gentle squeeze on her hand made her glance at her mother. "Maybe you should talk to Richard," she murmured. "He's sincere, Lily." A swirl of emotions churned in Lily's chest. She remembered Daniel's veiled threat, the hospital's suspicion, Carmen's push for a media story. Every path felt explosive, but if she remained silent, the hospital would likely dismiss her, and her mother's future treatments might be in jeopardy. Gritting her teeth, Lily opened a blank text reply to Richard. "We need to talk. I'm on probation. They might fire me. I'm so scared, Richard." Almost immediately he called. She stepped into the hallway to pick up. "Richard," she whispered, tears threatening again. "Lily," he said, voice firm with concern. "I just heard. This is insane. You've done nothing wrong. Let me contact the hospital board." She clenched her eyes shut. "That'll confirm to everyone that I have powerful strings to pull. I don't want the hospital to say I used your influence to keep my job. That might just prove their point." He paused, exhaling. "What if I come in person, off the record, and explain that you never solicited funds, that this was entirely my idea?" "It won't matter," Lily said with despair. "They've made up their minds to see me as a liability, unless I convince the public or the board that I'm innocent." Richard hesitated. "How?" She swallowed. "A reporter wants to run a piece highlighting my mother's journey and Redwood's help. If done right, it could show I'm not some schemer. But I fear it'll drag you into the spotlight too, and if your family sees that, won't it cause trouble?" Silence stretched. Lily heard the tension in Richard's breathing. "My family, Daniel specifically, might weaponize this. But if it clears your name, it's worth the risk. Let me handle any family blowback. Your career and your mother's health matter more to me than appeasing Daniel." Lily felt her chest tighten with gratitude, fear, and longing. She'd never expected anyone to fight for her like this. "All right," she whispered, tears slipping free. "I'll contact Carmen. We can present this as a straightforward story about Redwood's philanthropy. No mention of rent or hospital expansions. Just the truth." Richard's voice softened. "Yes, the truth. Let's do it carefully. I'll speak with Redwood's PR department, see if we can coordinate. The hospital can't accuse you of anything if Redwood itself publicly acknowledges that it was my personal donation unrelated to your hospital position." A flicker of hope cut through Lily's despair. "Thank you," she said, voice quivering. I don't know how I'll ever repay you for this." "You don't need to repay me," Richard said gently. "Just let me stand by you. We'll get through this." They hung up, Lily's heart pounding. She wiped her cheeks and stepped back into the living room, where her mother sat anxiously. Lily sank onto the couch. "I'm going to talk to the reporter," she said, voice trembling. "Richard will coordinate with Redwood's PR. Maybe if we go public, the hospital will see reason." Her mother's eyes filled with relief and worry. "Are you sure it won't backfire?" "No," Lily admitted, reaching for her mother's hand. "But I'm out of options." That night, Lily messaged Carmen to say she'd agree to an interview under certain conditions. Redwood's official involvement, a focus on her mother's medical journey, no sensational angles about the hospital. Carmen replied enthusiastically, setting a time to meet at Redwood in 2 days, promising a tasteful piece. Lily's stomach fluttered with nerves, but she felt a spark of defiance. If the hospital insisted on viewing her as corrupt, maybe the public unveiling of her genuine struggle would force them to reconsider. On the other side of town, Daniel learned through his channels that Lily was now preparing to do an interview in coordination with Redwood's PR. A triumphant smirk crossed his face. He fully intended to spin the story in a way that cast Lily as reliant on Richard's wealth and overshadowed by scandal. All he needed were a few well-placed whispers to cause the hospital to dig deeper, perhaps leaking that Lily had also had her rent paid. That could create an uproar, overshadowing any heartwarming narrative. Yet Richard, sensing Daniel's interference, quietly reached out to Redwood's top executives, insisting they keep the interview under tight control. No sensational details, no mention of rent. He wanted to emphasize Lily's mother's improvement, Redwood's charitable mission, and Lily's dedication as a caregiver and nurse in training. Redwood's PR manager agreed, partly because Richard Collins was the CEO of the entire conglomerate, and so the stage was set for the public showdown. Lily, fearful but resolved, prepared for the interview that could either salvage her credibility or unleash a new storm. Richard steeled himself for the inevitable backlash from Daniel. The hospital administration watched warily, ready to pounce on any excuse to confirm Lily's dismissal. And Carmen readied her camera, believing she was about to capture an uplifting story, unaware of the high-stakes battle swirling behind the scenes. On the morning of the interview, Lily dressed in her neatest outfit, her heart thrumming. Her mother, still physically fragile, insisted on accompanying her. After all, she was the living proof of Redwood's care. They stepped out into a crisp, clear day that felt deceptively calm. At Redwood's lobby, cameras and a small gathering of staff awaited. Richard stood to one side, a quiet pillar of support. Lily's gaze locked on him, warmth and anxiety filling her chest. This was it, her last chance to reveal her truth, protect her job, and secure her mother's lifeline. Under the bright lights of a makeshift setup, Carmen smiled into the camera, introducing Lily and her mother as prime examples of Redwood's life-changing impact. Lily spoke shakily at first, describing the depths of her mother's illness and how Redwood's quick intervention made a world of difference. She made no mention of the hospital scandal, nor of rent payments. Instead, she emphasized that someone from Collins Enterprises had been compassionate enough to connect them with Redwood. Her voice wavered with emotion, but she kept her dignity intact. Richard, standing off camera, felt a surge of pride and protectiveness. He could see Lily trembling, her eyes shining with tears as she recounted her fears and hopes. Carmen guided the conversation, capturing a narrative of a dedicated nurse who'd do anything for her mother, and who found an unexpected ally in Redwood's philanthropic mission. The staff around them looked moved, nodding in empathy. Even Dr. Miller appeared, chiming in about Lily's mother's progress and Redwood's commitment to helping families in dire need. Everything seemed to unfold smoothly, until a sudden commotion broke out at the edge of the small crowd. Daniel Collins strode in, flanked by two men in suits, camera flashes popping behind him. Carmen's camera swung around as Daniel put on a charming smile, speaking in a faux humble tone about the importance of transparency and proper philanthropic practices. The Redwood PR manager's face paled at Daniel's uninvited appearance. Lily's mother clutched Lily's arm, startled. Lily's breath caught in her throat. Why was Daniel here? She shot a panicked glance at Richard, who stepped forward, eyes flashing. "Daniel," he hissed under his breath, "what are you doing?" "I'm supporting Collins Enterprises' philanthropic image," Daniel replied smoothly, then raised his voice to address Carmen and the cameras. "We want everyone to know we have nothing to hide. We stand with Lily Reyes, who exemplifies hard work and dedication, but we also believe in accountability." Carmen, sensing drama, kept her camera rolling. "Accountability? Could you elaborate, Mr. Collins?" Daniel cast Lily a pointed look. "Yes. Well, we discovered an anonymous donation to cover Miss Reyes's overdue rent. While we applaud charity, we must ensure no conflict of interest has compromised the hospital or Redwood. We aim for total transparency." Richard's jaw clenched. "Daniel, this is neither the time nor place. This interview is about highlighting Redwood's care for Lily's mother." Daniel spread his hands in a theatrical gesture. "Precisely, little brother. Full disclosure ensures the public sees how we do things properly. Miss Reyes, would you like to clarify how you've managed to maintain your internship while receiving substantial funds from us?" A horrified hush fell over the small crowd. Lily's cheeks burned with humiliation. Her mother's eyes filled with tears. Carmen's camera didn't waver, capturing every second of tension. Redwood staff exchanged uneasy glances, unsure how to react. Richard's voice shook with anger. "Stop this, Daniel. You're turning a compassionate story into a spectacle." Daniel feigned innocence. "I'm just asking for truth. If Lily truly has nothing to hide, she can confirm all was handled ethically, right?" He smiled at Lily, cold and expectant. In that charged moment, Lily felt the world tilt. All her worst fears coalesced: the hospital's suspicions, Daniel's manipulations, the cameras recording her every move. Her hands trembled at her sides, her mother's grip tight on her arm. If she stumbled, if she misspoke, she could destroy everything. She forced a breath, summoning every ounce of courage. "My mother was dying," she began in a low, steady voice, trying to keep tears at bay. "I helped Mr. Richard Collins one day without knowing who he was. He chose to help me in return. No demands, no strings. My rent payment was a personal act of kindness, so I wouldn't lose my home while caring for my mother." Her gaze swept the gathered onlookers: Carmen's camera, Redwood staff, and Daniel's smug face. "I kept it private because I didn't want to be seen as exploiting anyone. I'm just an intern trying to survive and save my mother's life. If that's a crime, then I'm guilty of seeking help I never asked for but badly needed." Daniel's smile wavered slightly, apparently unprepared for her raw honesty. But he rallied. "I see, and the hospital administrators might feel differently, of course. They don't get to decide how a daughter saves her mother," Lily cut in, her voice rising with unexpected fierceness. "I've done my job, followed every rule, never used hospital resources for personal gain. Redwood's philanthropic mission saved my mother, just as it's helped hundreds of families. That's the story, Mr. Collins, not some contrived scandal." The gathering stood in stunned silence, only the hum of the camera audible. Richard stepped to Lily's side, placing a protective hand at her back. "Well said," he murmured, glaring at Daniel. "Let's keep the focus on Redwood's compassion, not on cheap insinuations." Carmen, sensing a potent headline, wrapped up the interview with a final shot of Lily and her mother embracing, tears in both their eyes. Richard lingered protectively, his posture a silent declaration of support. Daniel stood off to the side, eyes cold but forced to maintain a polished facade for the camera. In the days that followed, Carmen published an article and short video piece titled "Nurse in Training, A Daughter's Devotion and Redwood's Lifeline." It showcased Lily's mother's recovery, praised Redwood's role, and included Lily's heartfelt defense of her integrity. The segment quickly gained traction on social media, with viewers commending Lily's bravery and compassion. Some questioned the hospital's strict stance. Others applauded Collins Enterprises for helping quietly, drawn to the sentimental angle of CEO repays a small act of kindness with life-saving medical support. At the hospital, opinions shifted. The external audit still ran its course, but with public sentiment firmly on Lily's side, the administrators hesitated to penalize her further. Backlash from the article might paint them as heartless. Quietly, Ms. Dela Cruz informed Lily she would retain her internship, her probation rescinded, provided no new controversies arose. As for Daniel, he retreated publicly. He'd failed to cast Lily as a manipulator. Instead, the interview ended up bolstering her sympathy. Yet behind closed doors, he seethed, vowing to keep searching for an angle to undermine Richard. For now, though, his plan to discredit Lily had misfired. Richard, relieved by the positive outcome, maintained contact with Lily as she juggled her internship, final exam preparations, and her mother's continued infusions. Though gossip still simmered, it lacked the venomous edge from before. Lily's mother stabilized further under Redwood's regimen, and each day she seemed more alert, more hopeful. One late afternoon, Lily emerged from her nursing exam, nerves frayed but a cautious optimism in her chest. She checked her phone. A message from the hospital's system congratulating her on finalizing her internship hours. Another text from Redwood, confirming a grant had been approved to cover part of her mother's ongoing therapy. Her eyes misted with relief. At that moment, Richard's number lit up her screen. She answered quietly, stepping into a corner of the campus hallway. "Hey," she murmured, heart full. "I just finished my exam." "How do you feel?" he asked, warmth in his tone. "Tired, but good, hopeful." "That's what I like to hear," Richard said with gentle pride. "I'm also glad your hospital situation is resolving. I know it's been a nightmare." Lily smiled through sudden tears. "I couldn't have survived it without you. Thank you, Richard, for everything." He paused, voice softening further. "If this ordeal taught me anything, it's that real compassion can't be measured by money or corporate deals. It's about human connection. You reminded me of that, Lily." She swallowed, touched beyond words. "So what now?" "Now," he echoed, a smile in his voice. "You finish your nurse certification, continue caring for your mother, and maybe when you're ready we can talk about us, whatever that means in the midst of our crazy worlds." Lily's cheeks warmed. "I'd like that." In her mind she saw a path forming, one where her mother's health improved, her career advanced, and the stigma of these recent trials faded. She knew challenges remained. Daniel's lingering hostility, the possibility of future gossip, the ongoing cost of her mother's treatments. But in the aftermath of the public interview, she had reclaimed her narrative. No longer a helpless intern or a potential grifter, she was Lily Reyes, a nurse who fought for her mother and found unexpected allies in the process. Outside the campus window, the sun dipped low, casting a golden glow across the street. Lily clutched her phone, listening to Richard's steady breathing on the other end. Their connection felt fragile yet real, forged in moments of kindness and resilience. Whatever lay ahead, Lily refused to cower anymore. She'd face each day with the same resolve that had carried her through near eviction, hospital scrutiny, and painful rumors. Because in the end, she had one reason that overshadowed all the challenges: love for her mother, and perhaps the blossoming of something more profound with Richard. As she stepped out into the fading daylight, Lily turned her face to the sky, allowing herself a rare moment of peace. The world was still uncertain, but for the first time in a long while, she felt strong in her own story, and that, she realized, was what truly mattered. If you enjoyed this story, don't miss the next one. Just click on the screen